On this special one-year anniversary episode of Task Force X, we greet the Irredeemable Shag from the Fire and Water podcast as we review Firestorm number 64 and Firestorm Annual 5 with a guest appearance of the Suicide Squad. Plus, I review Suicide Squad issue number 4 and another special guest, Count Druncula, aka Ryan Daly, comes over and we discuss Comic-Con news and the Suicide Squad movie trailer. All on this wonderful one-year anniversary episode of Task Force X. Hey there, true believers. Welcome to the Task Force X Headcast. A proud member of the Headcast family, I am your host, Aaron Moss, otherwise known as Head. The Task Force X Headcast follows the adventures of DC Comics' Task Force X. Task Force X was made up of the Suicide Squad comic, which was created by John Ostrander and Ryan Scott, which started in the late 1980s, and the sister comic, Checkmate, created by Paul Kupperberg and Steve Irwin. These were two sides of DC's espionage comics.
Task Force X is an off-the-books government strike team, made up of convicts with no hope for release, serving as expendable agents for impossible missions. Succeed, and I'll shave time off your sentences.
If we don't,
you'll be dead.
Exactly. I will attempt to chronicle each title and all the books that the Suicide Squad and Checkmate appeared in during this era.
We're the U.S. government. Who's going to blow the whistle on us? The convicts? Who'd believe them? You? You're going to start a blog and expose us?
Well, yeah, Amanda. A blog and a headcast.
Those scumbags are trying to screw me.
No, not at all, Amanda. I'm just trying to help everyone else discover the joy of the Suicide Squad. Anywho, hope you guys have as much fun with these comics as I did when I first read them. Oh, so many years ago.
Punk.
Alright, Amanda.
bang.
We'll return after these messages.
Greetings, podcast listener. Do you like...
Gotcha, man!
Or maybe...
Dragon Blade!
How about...
Tatsuo! Ganeda!
Or...
In the year 1999, an abandoned alien battle fortress crash-landed on the planet Earth. Our most brilliant scientists and engineers spent the next 10 years reconstructing the damaged ship and studying its highly advanced space technology called Robotech.
Do you remember...
Our Star Blazers!
Or this?
The year is after Colony 195. As the world constantly changes in the chaotic era, there are two mobile suits that could turn humans into the ultimate weapon. The Wing Zero and the Epion.
Or maybe even this.
After the desire for blood rules all, the only hope left is the one they call D.
Or this.
Gene! Grappler ship's dead ahead!
It wouldn't be fun otherwise! Let's do it!
Or...
If Cardis is allowed to be reborn, she'll destroy Marmo as well as Lodos!
Or have you seen the latest episode of...
And just like that, everything changed. At that terrible moment, in our hearts, we knew home was a pen. Humanity, cattle.
If you answered yes to any of these questions, then you should check out Anime Freaks, hosted by Dr. Bill Robinson and me, Gene Hendricks. Anime Freaks is a monthly podcast covering all things anime. It is available at twotruefreaks.com and on iTunes under Two True Freaks Presents Anime Freaks.
Aquaman and Firestorm fighting crime together. Soak 'em down or burn 'em up. No one does it better. Whenever you find trouble, they'll always be there to catch them in a bubble or even torch their hair. They stand for truth and justice in sea, on land, and air. Firestorm and
Fire and Water Podcast, celebrating Aquaman, King of the Seven Seas, and Firestorm, the Nuclear Man.
Available weekly on Aquaman Shrine, Firestorm Fan, and on iTunes and Stitcher.
I'm one of your hosts, the Irredeemable Shag, here to talk about Firestorm. Along with me is my co-host Rob Kelly, here to talk about some guy that talks to fish.
Really? You're going to pull this crap during the promo? Bad enough I have to put up with your shenanigans every week, but...
And welcome back to our newest amazing episode, the 12th episode, our one-year anniversary of Task Force X. And today, we have an extra special guest star. I was able to pull him out of the basement and untie him. You may have heard him on the interwebs. You may have heard him on the iTunes or the Stitcher, wherever you listen to your podcast at. But today we have the Irredeemable Shag.
Hello! Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And those ropes were starting to chafe, so thank you very much.
Well, yeah, I got to let people out every once in a while. Yes, and the reason I'm having Shag on today is that... Well,
because I'm awesome.
Of course, Shag is awesome. And we are going to be talking about, well, another awesome character. We're going to talk about Firestorm, issue 64 and annual number 5, where the Suicide Squad crosses over. This takes place roughly around issues 3, 4, or 5, somewhere in that time frame. I saw one place. Mike's Wonderful World of Comics says it takes place right before 4, and something else I read said it takes place right after 4 of Suicide Squad. So I figured I'd do it right before issue 4, and good enough for me. So.
Dude, I'm totally hosed. I thought you said we were doing the Floronic Man, so I've been reading all these new Guardians comics for no reason, apparently.
That's me next week.
Oh, man. I'll just wing this.
See, I actually kind of like the, the New Warriors or whatever? Not New Warriors, that was Marvel. New Guardians.
New Guardians?
I actually kind of like that series.
Well, that explains the sales they got. So
that was me.
One person liked them. Congratulations.
So anyways, before we get any further, let's go ahead and Shag. Why don't you introduce yourself to my two listeners out there?
Well, thank you very much. My name is the Irredeemable Shag, and I am the co-host of a podcast called the Fire and Water Podcast, dedicated to Firestorm, the Nuclear Man, and Aquaman, King of the Seven Seas. Bit of an unlikely duo, those two, even though they're both on the Justice League together. They don't really make a lot of sense together, except somehow my co-host Rob and I, we sort of make it work. It's a fun show that sort of celebrates our love of DC Comics. I also run the Firestorm fan blog. It is the premier website dedicated to Firestorm on the internet, and I can say that because it's the only website on the internet dedicated to Firestorm, where I've been covering him for something like 7 years now. So I went from a time when he was this little know-nothing character barely in the back of the Justice League book with Jason Rush, and then now he's star of television. It's like, wow. He's gone through a transformation since I started this thing. It's become a lot bigger than it was. So I guess the reason Aaron, had me on the show, besides the fact that I paid him a lot of money, was that I am sort of the authority on Firestorm. So I stands to reason I would be here for the Suicide Squad episode, you know what I'm talking about, folks. I'm getting myself all turned around. It's this mansion that Aaron lives in the green room. I got to tell you, if you haven't had a chance to be on the show, the green room, he's just got whiskey and dancing girls. That's all that's in it. That's it. There's not even chairs, anything. So I'm all turned around. I'm having a hard time keeping my mind straight, so I apologize. Exactly. We got to sit down for the dances, right? True. Anyway, didn't you tell me this is supposed to be family friendly? Boy, I blew that.
Well, I just say this
anyway,
family.
So I first discovered Firestorm back on the Super Friends cartoon back in 1984 and immediately fell in love with the character. Started reading the comics. I'm going to mention specifically which issue in a little bit later because it is relevant. And then I've just been following the character ever since. Absolutely love it. And I'm glad that you launched this podcast about the Suicide Squad because I love me some Suicide Squad. And I have to be honest, I haven't read every issue even though I own them all. I've read like a bunch of ones in the beginning, a bunch of ones in the end, but I've never read the ones in the middle. And it's always been one of my objectives to do that, so it's fun to follow along with the show. And as you get to the ones I haven't read, I'm going to bust those out and read along.
Well, I'm glad you're enjoying the show. And again, as we talked about before, I'm enjoying your guys' Fire and Water podcast, mainly the fire portion. but that's another story entirely.
Yeah, that other guy, he just talks to fish.
Yeah, my son's always giving me grief about Aquaman. And that puts me in a bad position as I have to defend Aquaman. But
in all honesty, I'm a huge fan of Aquaman as well. I all kidding aside, I have dozens of Aquaman action figures. I'm a big fan, so I will actually stand up and defend him. But it's just more fun to pick on him because Rob's a really good sport about it.
That's always fun. Well, let's go ahead and get started with today's show then. Let's go ahead and start with the character profile of our guest star, Firestorm. So why don't you go ahead and take that, Shag?
Absolutely, folks. Firestorm, the Nuclear Man, is at this point in history where we're covering, which is 1987. Firestorm is composed. His alter ego is composed of Ronnie Raymond and Professor Martin Stein. Yes, that's right. He's two people. And his first appearance was in Firestorm #1, which was in December 1977. That's not what the cover date on the comic was. It listed 1978. However, I like to make the distinction that Firestorm did come out in the closing weeks of 1977 because it's the same year Star Wars came out. Firestorm was created by Jerry Conway and Al Milgrom. His team affiliations include the Justice League of America, several different incarnations of that team, by the way, because he's on-again, off-again member, Extreme Justice, Justice League Europe for one issue, Power Company, and the Black Lantern Corps. Firestorm's abilities include the ability to rearrange atomic and subatomic matter, specifically inorganic. He can basically rearrange the molecules create something from one object into another. He can turn a pencil into a plastic flower. He can turn, a swimming pool into a giant inflatable tire. Whatever the object may be, as long as it's not organic, he can transmute one to the other. As long as he is aware of the structure. He has to have the understanding of the inner workings of how that mechanism works. For example, he could create something that looks like a car, but he cannot actually create the car unless he understood exactly how the pistons and the belts and everything worked. Let's see. He also has the ability to fly. He can render himself intangible. He's able to create very destructive blasts of fusion energy. He can absorb radiation. He has demonstrated on some occasions a little bit of extra strength and a little bit of extra durability. And he also has, as I'm going to explain in a minute, he has a sort of a ghostly onboard passenger who can see 360 degrees when the story needs it. It doesn't always work quite like that. So very quick history on Firestorm because it's a very long history. But Firestorm is composed of two people, as I mentioned, Ronnie Raymond and Professor Stein. They were caught in a nuclear explosion through a series of incidents, and that nuclear explosion caused them to fuse. Professor Stein is a brilliant Nobel Prize-winning physicist. Ronnie Raymond is a reckless teenager. And together they make a heck of a duo. Ronnie's in control of the body, while Professor Stein is sort of, as I mentioned, the ghostly onboard passenger. He provides Ronnie with advice, specifically scientific know-how. And at this point in history, Firestorm's now been around for 10 years, and they've been through a number of different adventures. They've been a premier hero in New York, then they moved to Pittsburgh, and they've been members of the Justice League. They've been through a lot of different adventures, and they've developed their own rogues gallery. They even have not a sidekick, but a female counterpart in Firehawk, and he's become at this point a pretty hot member of the DC universe. He was quite popular, and his own series was up to 60-something issues at this point. Then, just to give you a little bit of talking about Firestorm. By the way, there's a very truncated version of Firestorm's history. Please seek out, whether it be a Wikipedia entry or the comics, and dive into it. Specifically, the Firestorm, the Nuclear Man trade paperback would be perfect. Gives you the first 5 issues of the comic.
And also, you may want to check out firestormfan.com. Just on that plug out there for you, Shag.
What's that? Is that a
it's
like
on the fancy thing. The inner tubes out there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, hadn't even heard of that. Okay. Firestorm's appearances in other media. As I mentioned at the top of the show, the Super Friends, the legendary Superpower show, was in 1984 where Firestorm was on there. Ronnie Raymond was voiced by Mark L. Taylor, and Martin Stein was voiced by, I'm not going to say this right, but Olan Soule in the first season, and the second season was voiced by Ken Sansom. Then he had a very minor appearance in Justice League Crisis on Two Earths. That was the Jason Rush version of Firestorm. I'm not even going to bother to explain that right now because we're dealing with 1987. But he was voiced by Cedric Yarborough. Then on Batman, and that was one direct-to-DVD movie. Then Batman the Brave and the Bold, which was an animated series. He appeared in several episodes. Again, it was Jason Rush, voiced by Tyler James Williams, and Ronnie Raymond was voiced by Bill Fagerbake. I don't know how to say it, but it's Patrick from SpongeBob. He appeared on several episodes there. Then on Robot Chicken, Firestorm appeared in one episode. It was the Ronnie Raymond version, and it was hysterical. Anyway, Alfred Molina did the voice of that. Then he was in the Lego Batman 3 Beyond Gotham video game. That was the Ronnie Raymond version. It was voiced by Nolan North. And finally, he is the star, and I noticed I didn't say guest star. I said star of the Flash TV series. It shouldn't have been named that. It should have just been named Firestorm. I don't know why they called it the Flash. But anyway, Firestorm appears on that show with Ronnie Raymond being played by Robbie Amell and Professor Martin Stein portrayed by Victor Garber. And then in the upcoming spin-off Legends of Tomorrow, Victor Garber will be in the show as Firestorm, and somebody else will be in the show
Legends
with him.
Tomorrow?
We don't know who.
I thought it was going to be called Firestorm and his nuclear friends.
Firestorm and his Atomic Friends. That is the actual title. Legends of Tomorrow is apparently like a working title they assigned on. Yeah. So I'm sure when it premieres, it will actually be called Firestorm and his Atomic Friends.
Oh, I wish.
That'd be the best. That'd be the best ever.
Oh, that's a great show. Anyways, so that's Firestorm to this point for the most part. Was there anything else you had for Firestorm?
Well, I mean, just to give you... I mean, you're going to give us sort of the story so far, I believe, as we go into this issue. Is that fair to say? Okay, then that'll get everyone up to date. Yeah.
Okay, our second character profile for today is going to be Multiplex. His real name is Danton Black. Affiliations, the Suicide Squad and the Secret Society of Supervillains. His powers, he has nuclear physiology. His powers are a mixture of nuclear fission and mass duplication. Early on, he had to find an energy source to boost his powers. Later on, he had his own energy source, which allowed him to create unlimited duploids, as they were called. He had what's called biofission, whereas Ronnie and Stein, they merged into one being. Danton was able to split himself into multiple copies, which he called duploids. They share his thoughts and identity, and were carbon copies of himself, but he could also create smaller versions of himself. He had enhanced strength, enhanced durability, and flight. Created by the great Jerry Conway and Al Milgrom, first appeared in Firestorm #1. And I just found this out doing some research. He had a daughter by the name of Catwoman 3 that appeared in the Batman Beyond.
Yep.
Yeah, I was not aware of that until I was doing research on, like, daughter, Catwoman 3, what the heck?
Shockingly, that is probably one of the most visited posts on Firestorm Fan is about that. Because people Google Batman and Catwoman and they find my site.
So anyways, for Mr. Multiplex, Danton Black was Stein's assistant while Stein was working on the experimental Hudson nuclear power plant. Stein caught Black stealing his plant designs and ended up firing him. Danton then accused Stein of stealing from him, which caused the Nuclear Regulations Council to postpone the plant's opening while they did their investigations. Professor Stein, fearing that the plant closing would give the plant a bad name and people would be fearful of it, decided to turn it on. Again, as I talked about in an episode of Head Speaks here, it was last month or so, during the Conway crossover, I talked about this issue. He ran his test, which was sabotaged by some eco-terrorists who planted a bomb in the facility. The resulting explosion caused the merger of Professor Martin Stein and Ronnie Raymond into Firestorm. But also, Danton Black had snuck into the plant to try to steal some evidence and something to support his case, his false case against Stein. He too was caught in the explosion and found that he could make himself into duplicates. Multiplex was Firestorm's first superpowered enemy. He was primarily motivated by money, power, and revenge. He was involved in a plot to kidnap Lorraine Riley and explore experiments on her, which led to becoming Firehawk. And a little side note, if you want to hear more about that, check out the Fire and Water podcast. Shag just got done talking about that here recently on their latest episodes. He also engineered an unsuccessful attempt to eliminate Firestorm by recruiting a handful of villains for the task. Which brings us up to pretty much the current date. So that's Multiplex.
That also doubled as a really good recap of Firestorm's origin that I totally skipped over the specifics of, so that worked out quite well. Now, I have to take issue with a couple of things you said because, you know, I'm an uber dork as I adjust my pocket protector and push my glasses up.
That's why I've got you here.
You said flight?
I pulled this from the Wikipedia entry on him. That's what they said. I'm like, I don't remember.
Well, if it's on Wikipedia, you know it's right. So that's
again, I pulled that from Wikipedia, so I thought maybe it was a story I missed or something. I don't recall him flying. but
I mean, I suppose it's possible because there were stories later on with slightly different incarnation. I mean, of Multiplex. Maybe that one had flight. I'm not sure. That's
weird. Him flying, but then again, I never seen Catwoman 3, so what do I know?
Now, interesting distinction. Now, this doesn't contradict anything said, but it's just a specific. One of the things that I loved about Multiplex, and specifically Jerry Conway designed this idea when he created Multiplex, was when you mentioned he creates duplicates, and then you mentioned he can create smaller ones. That's actually tied together. When he creates duploids, he's using his own mass to create those duploids, so therefore he has to give up some mass to create the new ones, so each subsequent duploid is smaller. So when he creates a ton of them, they're like itty-bitty, as we'll find out today in this issue. And so it's a cute idea that as he creates more duplicates, the smaller they get because there's less mass to go around.
Very good. Anything else that I missed or need to bring up?
No, you did a very nice job.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started with today's story. So prior to this, we're going to talk about Firestorm issue number 64. Prior to this, the series, as Shag was saying, was written by Jerry Conway. He wrote the story up through issue 53, where he revealed that Professor Stein had an inoperable brain tumor. Then it looks like the next issue was written by Paul Kupperberg. And then in issue 55, John Ostrander, who you guys listening may be familiar with from the Suicide Squad, took over writing Firestorm. Yeah, exactly. Professor Stein, knowing he doesn't have long for this world, decided he wanted to do something good, and he talked Ronnie into using Firestorm to make the world give up its nuclear bombs. Was this before or after Superman 4, Quest for Peace?
I'm glad you brought that up. Believe it or not, folks, we did not stage this before the show, but that's my next bullet point, my friend. So check this out. All right, the Firestorm annual, because the way this is going to go is Aaron's going to cover issue 64, and then I'm going to cover the annual. It's all one big story, though. The annual came out on July 21st, 1987. Guess what hit the theaters 3 days later? I kid you not. Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, which is the exact same plot as issues 62 through 65 and Annual 5 of Firestorm, hit 3 days later. And obviously, being a DC production and the fact that it takes a year or two to make a movie, that film had been in production for a long time. So whether John Ostrander, and I don't know this, I don't know whether John Ostrander got exposed to the Superman Quest for Peace plot or script or what, or if it just happens to be one incredibly happy coincidence, but boy, the plots are really similar. And in fact, if you look at the plot of Superman Quest for Peace, Superman battles a character called, the Nuclear Man. So, woo.
But yeah, just one thing, as I was writing my notes on this, I'm like, I wonder, because this came out in 87, I knew that Superman 4 came out around that same time frame. So I was just curious which one came first, and if it was one of those that one inspired the other, or maybe it was just happy coincidence.
Don't know, but certainly the parallels cannot be cannot be missed.
So anyway, he told the world that if they don't give up their bombs willingly, he would take them out. Basically, it's either his way or the highway. That brings us up to issue 63, where he ends up fighting Captain Comet and a few other things. My comments on issue 63 is the last page, is where we see Amanda Waller on the phone with someone, telling him that she's got the team together, even him, even though she's firmly opposed to using him. Not quite sure who him is yet, but she's referring to him. She said she'll ship them to New York, and to quote Amanda Waller, and the next time Firestorm surfaces, he'll find the Suicide Squad on his butt. And then we see a folder labeled Suicide Squad is open with pictures of Rick Flag, Captain Boomerang, Deadshot, and then we also see some Firestorm villains in here, Killer Frost, Parasite, Multiplex, and everyone's favorite, Slipknot. And now we move on to issue 64. The cover date on this was October of 1987, but the on-sale date, if you want to buy this fresh off the stand, you need to hop in your time bubble and go back to July the 2nd of 1987.
I see what you did there.
Thank you. The cover price for this was 75 cents. 3/4 would have bought you this back in 1987. It was edited by Dennis J. O'Neill, and the title was Through the Gauntlet. It was a 22-page story written by the great John Ostrander, penciled by Joe J. Rosuski. I'm probably butchering the poor guy's name. Inker was Sam De La Rosa, letterer Duncan Andrews, and the colorist is Nancy Houlihan, or that's how I'm going to pronounce it.
There you go.
So we start out this issue with the Expositional News Network giving us an update of Firestorm's ultimatum and his fight with Captain Atom from the previous issue. Ron's dad, named Ed Raymond, complains about these Cape Clowns, and his wife Felicity Smoke Raymond attempts to defend Firestorm in his actions. At this time, Ronnie At this time, Ronnie and a sick and dying Martin Stein show up, and they reveal to Ed that his son's secret. Meanwhile, we see Ronnie's girlfriend, I'm doing quotes, is contemplating revealing Ronnie's ID to the police.
Ex-girlfriend, thank you very much.
Is it ex at this point? See, I hadn't read these so I couldn't remember if they were ex or if this was what led her being his ex. But,
pretty sure she's the ex.
But we'll get
if she's not, we're just going to call her that.
There you go. We'll get into that in just a few minutes here, I'm sure. Back at the Raymond household, Ed is ranting and raving about Firestorm's plan to disarm the world and the fact that his wife, which is Ronnie's stepmom, knew Ronnie's secret and didn't tell him. At this point, Firehawk shows up. Another, meanwhile, at Lermontov Institute, which is over in Russia. And I actually had to look this up to see if it was an actual place. And it looks like it's a town in Straplov Krai, Russia, located in the mountainside of Bestu, named after a Russian poet. That's more information you probably wanted to know. We find a gentleman named Michael Arkadin in a rocket red armor being told by a man named Zarsto that the Americans are going to allow a Russian hero a chance at Firestorm. Meanwhile, back at the Raymonds, we find that Firehawk, a.k.a. Lorraine Riley, has come to help her friend. She's overheard talks of the U.S. sending a group called Task Force X after him, plus allowing the Russians to come after our hero. While Stein is ready to give up and turn himself in, Ronnie refuses and gives an impassioned speech about how he refuses to surrender. With his family behind him, Firestorm heads to Times Square to hold a press conference, with Firehawk joining him. We then see Rick Flag of the Suicide Squad being called to action by a contact in the media. He lets his team know that as far as the general public knows, this is just a team of villains doing something about Firestorm on their own. Again, as they're a covert team, the public doesn't need to know that the government's sending them. He reminds the team, especially Deadshot, that they are to take him alive if possible. We also find out that they have the Parasite on hand as a last resort. Firestorm tells the world that he refuses to let our government destroy our world, and once all nuclear weapons are disarmed, he'll surrender to their judgment. He says he'll be out in Nevada above the underground nuclear test site. Before he can depart to Nevada, our team, the Suicide Squad, shows up to confront him, consisting of a lot of his enemies. After they do a little fight, and he takes out the command skiff that Flag's on, Firehawk is finally able to join the fray. Unable to contact Flag, Dexter Tolliver, who's a NSC liaison for the Suicide Squad, this is his first appearance, orders the release of Parasite. And at this point, the Justice League shows up on the scene.
Dun dun.
Dun dun dun. And then finally, for the epilogue, Ronnie's ex-girlfriend, Miss Doreen Day, goes to the police and lets the chief know that she knows who Firestorm really is. To be concluded in the Firestorm Annual. So, Shag.
Awesome.
Yes, you're going to say?
I was just going to say awesome. I love this issue, man. Absolutely love it.
I started reading this during the blank slate era of Firestorm is when I started reading, because I didn't get into comics until 87 or so. Mm-hmm. So I backtracked all these and bought all these later on, and this was a great storyline. The whole series was great. But anyway, let's go and talk about this issue. Let's start with the cover.
Oh my gosh, such a fantastic cover! It's one of my favorite Firestorm covers. Actually.
Yes, it's a great cover. I like Firestorm's in the foreground. You see the Suicide Squad formed up, but mainly Firestorm's enemies in the background, disembarking from a helicopter that Multiplex is flying. And then we got both of their logos on the page. Every time I see this cover, I smile.
Mm-hmm.
It's, as you said, it's a great cover. I could go on all day about how wonderful it is.
Well, it's a perfect representation of both the books at that time. because you've got Flag, you've got Boomerang, you've got Deadshot, so you really get a sense for the squad. Again, then as you mentioned, the Firestorm foes are there, and Firestorm, it perfectly captures it. Now, it's interesting to note, I never noticed this till this moment, but there's actually a typo on this cover.
Is right.
It lists this across the top, Ostinger, Brzezowski, and Giordano. And Dick Giordano did not ink this comic. He may have inked the cover, I'm not sure here, but he did not ink the interiors. So
you are correct. I did not notice that.
I've never noticed that in these years.
I wonder if he was supposed to ink it or if...
Don't know. So, interesting. But again, great cover.
And then we move on to the first page. My notes on here is I like how Ed has he ranting and raving about Firestorm and what Firestorm's doing. He refers back to the Legends series, which I believe is only like 5 or 6 months before this.
If I'm not somewhere in that range. Somewhere in that range. Because the crossover was issue like 55, and so that's like 9 months ago. So somewhere in that range.
9 months. So yeah, I like how he refers back to the Legends. He refers how Godfrey was right. I also like how they worked in the Expositional News Network to let everyone know what's happening up to this point.
Yeah, you wait till the next one.
I've got to.
So I got to point out for you folks at home. Yes, you did hear Aaron right. He said Felicity Smoke. Yes, that's right. The hot blonde chick on Arrow, named Felicity Smoke, is in fact Firestorm's stepmother.
Yes, I have that note here also to point that out. Very different character, but still remarkably similar. I mean, if I remember right, Felicity here, when she first appeared, was in charge of a software company.
Mm-hmm.
And in the CW verse, she's into computers, which I guess could be seen as a modern equivalent.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really just tangentially connected, really, just name and career, because Felicity Smoke in the comics is a really confident, straightforward businesswoman who's more into the business side of it than the computer side of it, and she's really not polite. She's very rude for a good number of the issues. Whereas the Felicity Smoke on the TV, she's sort of insecure. She's just sort of constantly goofing up with saying the wrong thing. And pretty much all kinds of adorable. So I think they just kind of went with the name, and that's fine with me. I mean, hey, got the name out there.
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
All right.
And like there on the second page where the TV's asking, "Where is Firestorm? What we do now?" As Ed opens up the door and we see Ronnie and a sick Martin Stein standing there. Oh. I thought that was a very nice,
powerful moment.
Introduction to the team.
Yeah, definitely. And just seeing Martin that weak. Is just it makes for those people that are fans of Firestorm, it just makes your heart sad to see Martin just so weak and so towards the end of his life here.
Yeah, he's balding. He's got his hair's falling out, and he looks like he's knocking on death's door.
Yeah,
which again, is a sad thing.
And Ronnie and his dad have always had a shaky relationship, so the very fact of Ronnie coming to his dad for help had to take a lot of courage probably built up by Ronnie just to go to his dad admit he needs help.
Most definitely. And I like I think it's on page 3 where they're bringing in Professor Stein, laying him down, and Ed's worried about Ronnie being expelled, and everyone else in the room knows about the secret, and they're hinting around that something else is going on, and Ed's like, what are you talking about? Who's this man? You get kicked out of school. What's going on here? And they're like, Felicity's like, maybe you should tell your dad. He's like, tell me what? What's going on here? I just like the way he's just very aggravated with the whole...
I would be too. I mean, if everyone in the room's acting like... It's sort of like Iris on The Flash, if you watch The Flash show. Everybody knows, up to a point who buries The Flash, except for her.
Yes.
I mean, pretty much, like, even the homeless guys in the street at this point probably know before Iris did. And it's sort of the same with Ed Raymond, and it keeps getting reinforced throughout the issue, even when Firehawk shows up, that everybody knows except for Ed.
Yeah.
It's just kind of sad.
Yeah, again, I don't blame him for being upset. Because, again, like you said, he has every right to be... I mean, especially since it's his son and he doesn't know his son's biggest secret until now.
Right.
And then on page 4, when he turns into Firestorm, he's like, "Hi, Dad. I just like the way I like that scene." Of course, any scene of Firestorm I like, so...
It's a great scene because this is issue 64, and then you go back previous to that, the original 5-issue series and the Justice League appearances and all this jazz. I mean, this has been coming for 10 years. This moment.
Oh yeah.
And to finally have it, and you get Firestorm, who looks obviously so bizarre with the flaming hair and the garish costume and all that, contrasted against just a normal suburban living room. They've got hanging plants, they've got curtains. It's very much a normal, just everyday 80s sitting room. And here's Firestorm standing in the middle of it, and he just looks completely out of place. And then, as you said, just a very calm "Hi, Dad" is just wow. And Ed's kind of jumping back like, what the heck? And it's a great panel. It really is.
And then next to that we have his ex-girlfriend. What do we know here? Doreen Day, the world's worst girlfriend.
She totally is. At this point, by the end of this issue, I'm ready for her to die in a fire.
Oh yeah, multiple times.
She was never a very good girlfriend. Now, Ronnie is no prize as a boyfriend either. I mean, don't get me wrong. That dude ditched her every time he needed to change into Firestorm. Never told her the truth, and was even two-timing her for a while with Firehawk.
Right.
So he's no prize either in the love department. In fact, there's a guy who runs a blog. There's a link on my site, a Firestorm site. He hasn't updated a long time, but he had just constant posts about Firestorm's in his relationship with women and the idiotic things he would do, and most of them were him and Doreen. But so they've had this on again, off again relationship since high school, and now they're officially. Well, I think they're officially split up at this point. I got to reread it myself. But the gist of it, she finally found out he was Firestorm. And not because Ronnie felt like he had to tell her, but because he had to save someone's life, so he had to transform right in front of her. And she's really hasn't come to terms with that yet. Never mind the fact that Firestorm saved her life a number of times in the old days.
Yeah. So yeah, considering the way she found out, I love Firestorm, so it's hard for me to side against him, but maybe she feels she's in the right being a secret. I don't know. It's hard for me to side against Firestorm on anything. So,
well, all right. So I'll play devil's advocate for a second here. Professor Stein has convinced Ronnie to try and get rid of all the nuclear weapons in the world, and they're doing it with a ridiculous threat. As you said in your recap, if the United States and the Soviet Union do not give up their nuclear missiles, he claims he's going to detonate them. Now, he tells Ronnie privately that this is totally a bluff. They're never going to do that. But Stein convinces himself that they need to do that in order to make this happen. And I got to think that some of this comes from Stein's background. Stein is not a physically active guy. He is not an aggressive guy. In fact, he was bullied when he was younger. And that's scarred him his whole life, being bullied. And so it's almost like I think Stein's idea of threatening the world by blowing it up is what he's with that threat. It's almost like maybe he's trying to think like a bully does. Like it's a victim trying to think how a bully would think and taking action, and it's just the wrong thing to do. I mean, he's totally wrong. I mean, it's no problem with getting rid of the missiles, but wrong-headed to threaten everyone that they'll detonate the missiles if they don't cooperate.
Yeah, no, I agree. Saying you need to get rid of your missiles, that's a good thing, but going around saying if you don't do what I tell you to, I'm going to blow them all up. Yeah, that's probably the wrong approach to take because he's not going to make too many friends.
with that said, then here comes the devil's advocate part, which is maybe Doreen is justified in turning Firestorm in. I don't know.
That's what I keep telling myself, but again, it's hard for me to fight against Firestorm on anything. So.
And it's Doreen.
Yes, it is Doreen. I don't know.
All right, we could talk about this all day. We got to get through another comic still.
Yeah, this is true. Anyway, so moving on quickly, or slowly as we are. And as you were talking about on page 5, Ed brings up some of the same thing as you said, that it's physically impossible for them to do what they're going to do, and if they do, like I say, he brings in some of the reality.
Yep.
Of what he's like, well, even if you do manage to get rid of all these bombs, there's still the chemicals, there's still the people that knows how to make the bombs. You're not saving anything by destroying just the nuclear missiles, because there's all these other ways we can destroy ourselves. I really like that.
I think it was a nice way of Ostrander to sort of say both sides. Some people thought his issues were a little too preachy because they went after socially relevant issues.
Right.
Nuclear weapons was very relevant in the mid to late 80s. But and here using Ed as a voice piece, a mouth, whatever I'm trying to say, as a mouth, that talkie talk thing.
A mouthpiece.
He's talking. Thanks. That's the one. Anyway, so Ed is the voice of the other side, and he makes a lot of sense. So it's sort of not to sound like Fox News, but it's a bit balanced, because he's telling you we should get rid of the weapons, but then Ed's saying you can do that, but that doesn't solve the problems. So you get to hear both sides, which is good.
And then on page 6, Lorraine Riley. If Shag doesn't say it, I will. She's hot.
Totally hot.
And not just because she's Firehawk.
Right.
And then, again, as I said in my recap, I had to look up that Lermontov to see if it was a real place. I couldn't find an institute, but as I said, I found a town that was named after a poet from the 1800s. So I'm assuming it's related to that.
That works.
But, again, as I'm reading this, I wonder if that's a real place. And handy internet at my fingertips, I had to look it up. And then page 7, we see that Michael is under the KGB's thumb due to his family. And these next couple of pages, I mean, this page and the next page, I believe it is, even though he has this tremendous power and he's, he can do all this stuff, he still has concerns for his family, which makes him just as weak and as human as the rest of us. I like the way that played out myself.
Absolutely. What resonated for me on these pages even more, though, is in Mikhail's frustration, he disintegrates a table and then blasts open a wall. And the whole time he's doing it, his KGB handler, whose name is Zastro, is just sitting there. Doesn't even flinch. And just ends it by saying, pretty much, no, you don't have a choice. You have to do what we say. And it just makes Zastro, who's just a normal human and probably even a kind of a withered old man, makes him just evilly creepy.
Oh yeah, very much so.
Very effectively done. And he'll continue to be a recurring character for a couple of years here too.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and like I say, being a family man myself, I understand where Michael's coming from. He doesn't want to do it, but you do what you have to protect your family.
Absolutely.
And then, unless you have anything else here, on page 8, oh great, is there anyone else that doesn't know your Firestorm besides me? I love that line.
It's true. I mean, you think about it. If you go back to Firestorm number 1, supporting characters in that comic are, Doreen Day. Oh, she knows. Dan Black. Oh, he knows. And Professor Stein, Ronnie Raymond. They know. Oh, and Ed Raymond. So going back to all the way to the first issue, and Ed's the only one who never was told. Wow, that's pretty bad.
I don't think Cliff Carmichael was ever told. Of course,
at some point he figures it out down the line. So,
but yeah, but seeing how he's Firestorm's or Ronnie Raymond's arch nemesis, if you will, I guess that's not a good place to bet Ronnie's dad.
Right. Right.
And then we move on to the next page where they talk about Lorraine saying, talk about Task Force X and saying that it was formed sometime after her dad left, and they don't know when it was formed. Well, if you've been listening to the podcast, you know when Task Force X was formed. I covered it back in Legends 3 and the Secret Origins 14 issues.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I'm going to say right now, I really like the way the emotions Ostrander wrote into the story. Between Ed coming down on Ronnie about, what would have happened if he was able to get rid of the nuclear warheads, and on page 10 and 11 is Ronnie's little speech about how, Stein's ready to give up, and he's like, well, no, I did not give the world permission to do this. I did not, none of us in this room gave them permission to have all these warheads and have the ability to destroy us in a heartbeat. And again, as we said earlier, while the way he's doing it may be wrong, Ronnie makes some very valid points. Yeah,
absolutely.
At least myself, I have to agree with them. Again, I can't agree completely with the way he's going about it, but when you've got a younger kid and an old man that's ready to die, reason may not be the best choice you have out there, best thing out there, or the first option.
Well, in every young man's life, there comes a point where you feel like you need to stand up for something.
Yes.
And you realize at that point there is an easier option, whatever your situation is, there's an easier option, which may be ignore the situation or whatever, or stand up for what you believe in, and you realize at that moment the road you're about to take is a tougher road than you could choose, and yet you choose to do it anyway. I think everyone's sort of reached that point in their lives. And it doesn't mean you're saving the world necessarily. It might mean just telling a friend something that's, they don't want to hear, whatever it might be in your life. And this is Ronnie's moment. This is Ronnie's moment where he realizes this is an incredibly hard road he's going to do, but it's the right thing to do. And it's powerful, except for when he punches the bookcase. That had to really hurt his hands.
Very much so. And on page 12, I like the love and support that Ronnie's dad's showing him.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a very touching scene. I mean, his dad, even though he disagrees with the way they've gone about things, he's basically telling him, well, I'm your dad, I'm here for you. What do you need me to do? You get that little hug, and that show that he still loves it. No matter what they've gone through, he loves his son. He'll do whatever he has to help his son out. That's a very touching scene.
And it's followed right afterwards with this really wonderfully, it's a tiny little panel, but it's very iconic of Firestorm. It's the fourth panel. It's a silhouette of Firehawk, as Lorraine transforms into her, and a silhouette of Ronnie and Professor holding hands as they're about to transform into Firestorm with all this energy bursting off of them. It's just a simple little panel, but for some reason it just strikes me as I just really like that panel. It just screams Firestorm.
I had that same note about the scene about Firestorm and Firehawk just appearing. Fantastic.
Yep.
And then at the very bottom of the page where Felicity, she's looking out the window and she's got a tear in her eye. Goodbye, Ronnie. Like it's gonna be the last time she's ever gonna see him again.
Yep.
Oh, just looking at that panel just makes me want to tear up a little. Makes me want to tear up a little. Just the fact especially that it's a stepmom, and she still has this incredible love for her her son, if you will.
Yeah, and I'm a stepfather myself, so I can kind of relate to that and the struggles that come with being a step-parent. Now, I'll have to, before we get into the next bit, because the next bit's pretty important to your show, in general, I'm a little torn on Joe Brzezowski as the Firestorm artist. Now, he did it for a number of issues, even for a few years, and he's got some issues that are better than others. This is some of his really good work.
Oh, yeah.
Some stuff later on, like when the Zuggernaut era and stuff like that gets pretty funky. But, so I enjoy this, although at the same time, if I was honest with myself, I'd rather see like a Pat Broderick or a Raphael Kayanin drawing Firestorm at this point, just for the cleaner work.
Most definitely.
What does work well, though, is Joe Brzezowski's sort of muddy, maybe? I don't know if that's the right word for it, but he's got kind of a rough-edged style at this point, and that works really well with the Suicide Squad being in the book, because Luke McDonnell, was Luke drawing Suicide Squad from the start, wasn't he?
Yes.
Okay, and he has a similar sort of rough edge style, and so it works well in this issue because having the two groups together.
Most definitely, I think this was a very good art, especially for like you said, for the Suicide Squad showing up, and again, he's a good artist for the most part. I mean, again, some of the later issues not quite so spectacular, but this one here I thought he did a really good job on, which brings us up to page 13.
Dun, dun, dun.
Halfway through the book, we finally get to the Suicide Squad.
Woo!
And again, this page here, we get, like, on this one page, we kind of get a recap of who the Suicide Squad is and what their deal is. I mean, they go from everything from they're getting time knocked off their sentences to the bracelet's going to blow up if they don't listen. They've even got this note on here about Deadshot's normally killing people. They don't say it, but basically Flag's insinuating by saying, our mission is to capture Firestorm alive, if possible. That means you, Deadshot.
No disintegrations. As you wish.
But yeah, again, being a Suicide Squad fan, I really like the way this page is laid out. And again, the artwork very much sets in with the Suicide Squad book at the time.
When I was a kid and I read this, when it came out off the stands, I thought it was kind of silly at the time that they stocked the Suicide Squad full of Firestorm villains, because I thought, really, it should be, because in my mind it should have been the traditional Suicide Squad, they're only in issue 4, but the Suicide Squad main members, and So I was kind of like, well, it's kind of weird they stocked it with Firestorm characters, especially like Slipknot and Killer Frost and all this stuff. And now, in hindsight, I'm like, I feel like an idiot. Because, like, of course they would stock them with Firestorm characters, because the whole point is not so much who went on the mission as far as power level, but the fact that this is supposed to be a black op. And in order to stay under the radar, you should send Firestorm villains after Firestorm. It's like, oh. And as a kid, I guess that just didn't resonate. Maybe I didn't get espionage enough. I don't know. But now as an adult, it's like it makes perfect sense.
Well, also, I mean, who best to send against Firestorm but someone that's fought him before, maybe even unsuccessfully, but...
I was going to say, yeah, send a bunch of people who got their butts handed to them.
But with a long Deadshot and, I don't think Captain Boomerang, but he's not much better. But with Rick Flag leading the team, hopefully you would think maybe it's just that because the team's got power.
Yeah.
Between Killer Frost and Multiplex, I mean, Slipknot's great power. Oh.
They could have really used, Nightshade or Plastique on this one, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know where Plastique was at this point. She wasn't a member of the team yet.
Well, didn't she...
actually, no, she was in the first issue.
She just got her mind changed right before this, didn't she?
Yeah, she was she was in the first 2 issues.
Yep.
And and they were brainwashing her and releasing her, so...
Yep.
So that's why they wouldn't use her, and...
Mindboggler's dead by this point.
Nightshade...
Well, she was in the book, if I remember right? Or is she just in there as Eve at this point?
In the next issue, she's in issue 4, the Suicide Squad, which takes place right after this or right before this, depends on who you listen to. So she may have been gone working on the next mission, possibly.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it all just works for the story. Ultimately, the real answer is it works for the story.
I guess we're looking way too much into this.
Oh yeah.
But I guess that's why I'm doing a Suicide Squad podcast and you're doing a Firestorm podcast, because you look too much into these things.
Right, exactly. Because that's exactly what Ostringer, expected was 30 years later, a couple of nerds sitting around and talking about it panel by panel.
A couple of grown men sitting here at night talking.
Middle-aged men talking about it. Yep.
Yeah. Anyways, let's get on from this page on to 14, where Rick Flag and Tolliver's got their little dust about who's in charge.
You mean Lee Marvin?
Yeah.
Doesn't it look like Lee Marvin in that bottom panel?
Yeah. Yes, it does. Very much so.
Which makes sense. I mean, Dirty Dozen, Suicide Squad, there was, obvious similarities.
Oh, that's one thing that Ostringer said he based this on was the Dirty Dozen, so it very much fits. Anyways, on page 15, unless you have anything else there.
We're good.
I like the top panel there where it shows a close-up of Firestorm's face and the Professor's ghost image by his eyes.
Mm-hmm. The little tiny Professor.
Yes, to me, just this one little panel encapsulates the entire Firestorm for me. It just... It's very Firestorm to me. I don't know what... It'd be nicer if they had a full face of him, but just seeing his eyes with Martin Stein, his ghostly image, right next to him, talking to him, I just really like the way that's done.
Yep.
And then, again, on this page, Firestorm's little speech about how, he's a hero, he's trying to right the wrongs, he's trying to do the right thing. He may not do the right things all the time, but he's trying to do the right things. And then, like, there at the bottom where we see all the bit players. We see Ed and Felicity, Chief Ferguson, and then Waller with Reagan watching Ronnie or Firestorm as he talks on the news.
Mm-hmm.
That was very nice.
Oh, yeah. No, real quick, in regard to Waller, and maybe you've mentioned this on the show before, but like you were talking recently about the casting of Waller and stuff like that.
Right.
Have you ever, and if you have said this, I'm sorry, I either heard it or just didn't process it. Have you ever said that Waller is based on Nell Carter?
No, I don't think I've ever said that.
Okay, because physically, I mean, she's totally Nell Carter.
Yes, I have thought about that in the past, but yes, very much so.
I mean, even her attitude from the show "Give Me a Break." I mean, it's all right there.
Very much so. Yeah, if she was of age, I mean, if she's still with us.
No, she's passed on.
Okay, yeah. If she was still alive, and if we did this in the 70s, Nell Carter would be a perfect person to play. Of course, at this point, I still want to see. My mind just turned off.
CC Pounder.
Thank you. Yes, CCH Pounder. I still think she's the perfect. Of course, she usually does the voice for Waller, but I think I think she's the perfect Waller myself.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't pay me to come up with these ideas, so I'm just gonna sit here and complain and deal with who we get.
Yep.
But moving on from that, on page 16 there, I like the way this page is. The villain's jumping off the sky skiff, jumping onto Firestorm in the middle of the crowd there.
It's a great shot.
Oh, yeah, very much. Firestorm's like, well, we got the Nevada desert. If you want, come take me. And Boomerang's like, one question, mate. How you plan on getting there? The villain this page just makes me smile every time I see it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a great way to just... With Slipknot swinging in... Oh, wait a minute. Slipknot's rope isn't even connected. Oh, no! He's falling to his death. But it's just a great moment. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, much like Multiplex, I think he's just jumping off.
Well, he can fly.
Yeah. Apparently. And yeah, maybe fly. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Anyways. But yeah, the next couple of pages, Firestorm taking on all his villains. Like, the villains are attacking. Firestorm's eyes are very wide. As wide as he can get without having pupils, but...
Yep. I love that the sky, whatever it's called, the sky disc doesn't work. I love that they're having trouble flying it and frustrated with it. And I don't remember. Do they ever use that thing again, or was this just for
I think this was a one-time use, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, just for fun and because it looks cool, kind of thing, probably.
Well, and Rick says that it's experimental, so.
Well, I'm just talking from a creative point of view,
right.
Like Austin and the artist is like, well, that'd be neat. Let's do that, kind of thing. And then let's not ever do that again.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know why they never came back. I don't think they came back to it.
Yeah.
As we go along, I don't think they ever came back to the sky skiff or whatever they call it.
Well, I really dig, and I don't know if I'm jumping ahead here. I really dig Lorraine's reveal, and I have messed up and lost my page. But here we go. Lorraine's reveal on page 17.
Yes.
When she it's not 17.
Page 18.
What is go? Thank you.
Top page 18.
Jeez, that's what happens when you're looking at comics digitally and you just touch the wrong stupid button and all of a sudden you're like, where'd it go? Anyway, yeah, when she transforms, she's running through Times Square and she's crowded and she can't transform into Firehawk because there's a big burst of energy and everything, So she's going to fry people if she does. She's kind of got to get free of the crowd, and then there's this great sort of like bursting free shot of her in that costume, and I love that version of the costume.
Oh yeah, me too.
This is my favorite Firehawk costume. She looks so cool. And then her up against Killer Frost. And I really like that shot of Killer Frost on page 18 too. On the right-hand side middle panel, it's just sort of a profile shot of her with Firehawk in the background.
Yes.
It's a nice setup. They're, fire and ice, always a nice thing to put together. Really works well.
Very much so. And then my next comment's not until page 19. The next page,
I hope it's about Slipknot.
About him getting Firestorm. Well, my comment's about Firestorm bursting his flame out of his head and making Slipknot think he got burnt.
Yep.
Well, I got two comments on this page. That, plus the Killer Frost and Firehawk there below that.
Yeah.
Again, if you don't say it, I'm going to have to.
I'll do it. They're about to kiss, folks.
Yeah.
And it's hot.
There you go. Very much so.
I mean, that is sexy right there. A psychologist could write a paper on teenage boys with just that panel alone.
Very much so, yes. I like that. The whole page, well, the whole issue's good, but yeah, I like that. We got right above you got Slipknot and Fear that he's got burnt, and right below that you've got if you didn't know what was going on, if you didn't have Lorraine Riley saying no, that could almost be a different image there.
Well, but how does Killer Frost usually take heat from people?
By kissing them.
Usually by kissing them.
Yes.
So I mean, it's
and that's what
I might need to take a cold shower after this.
Yeah, I'll be right back. I mean, anyways, let's move on from that.
Well, Slipknot getting spooked in Firestorm's hair is nice. I mean, you've talked about it in a previous episode, or maybe that was over on Head Speaks, I don't remember. But you were talking about how is Firestorm's hair actually fire or not?
Yeah, it was on Head Speaks.
And that presents a good question. Is Firestorm's hair actually on fire? And apparently the answer is no. It does look like flames, and it is an expending of energy, but apparently it does not generate heat, and it would not burn somebody, which just sounds bogus to me.
Because I thought, maybe I'm mistaken because it's been 20, 30 years ago since I've read it, I thought during some of the Justice League issues, Martian Manhunter was staying away from him because of the heat from his head.
Or it could have just been his own innate fear. I mean, you could no prize that though.
Yeah, very well could.
And say that you could just say just the very sight of the fear created a psychological response in him. It's sort of like when you dream you're falling, this sort of thing. Psychological response, and he saw the fire and had the fear. So yeah.
And again, I wasn't sure.
But even here, I mean, Slipknot is, even though he didn't get injured, he's convinced he did.
Right.
So the fear, is legitimate. It seems very realistic. I just like how Firestorm cranks it up like a, a hairdryer.
Yeah, no, I did have that note because I love that.
Yep.
I don't know. Slipknot was a little, he's kind of goofy anyways, but he's kind of being a little silly there, getting so close to someone's got flaming hair.
Yep.
But yeah, no, I do like the way he turned up the heat and just, you see Slipknot, ah!
Yep.
I like that comment there. Guess they're not really serious about it if they sent you.
Right. Perfect.
Kind of like what we were talking about earlier.
Absolutely. When we get to our Slipknot profile, we'll talk a little bit about that.
Oh, yeah. And then there at the bottom where, and they've heard of the platform they're on is called the Sky Wedge.
Okay. Of course it is.
Tolliver makes a mention down here, and he's a little too eager to release Parasite.
Now, you said this is Tolliver's first appearance. Now, he becomes a regular in Suicide Squad, right?
I believe so, yeah. Yeah, he shows up later on. This is his first appearance. And then again, he shows up in issue 8.
Okay.
Is when he starts appearing. So, I don't know, it's a little strange having him appear over here and then not showing up for another 4 or 5 months in the main book. But yes, he will show up in the main Suicide Squad book here in a couple months.
Well, they very effectively made you hate him right out of the gate.
Oh, yeah.
As a reader. So, well done.
Yeah, I was hoping he would die, because, this moron forces these guys to release the Parasites.
Yep. Who, at this point, is a fairly new character, actually.
Yeah, he came out and, we'll talk about that here in a little bit.
Yep, good point.
But, my next note's on page 21. Unless you have anything before that.
I think that's the same one as I do.
Yep. Justice League showing up.
Woo!
The brand new, I think they've only been around, as we covered earlier, 6-8 months. The Justice League. They just showed up after the Legends miniseries.
Mm-hmm. At this point, known as the controversial Justice League.
Yeah.
Well, it was because everyone was. I mean, there was a lot of we all think of the JLI era now as everyone loves it and it's celebrated and all this and that. Back then, man, there were a ton of people that hated that era of the Justice League. They just couldn't get on board with the Justice League being funny. And, where they, instead of fighting supervillains, they were more worried about, Thursday being pizza night at the embassy.
Yeah.
A lot of people had trouble with this and just could not get on board with this vision of the Justice League. In fact, I'm not even sure I was totally, sold on it at this point myself. But you can't help but look at that scene. Blue Beetle swinging in, Black Canary swinging in. Really, there's no reason for Black Canary to swing in like that. But anyway, Batman swinging in, the other heroes flying. It's very exciting. It's very exciting.
Oh, yeah, no, I love this page. Firestorm looking up in the sky. Maybe you all better surrender. As we see the team swooping down. See, I'm not sure which issue of Justice League, because I know when the Justice League first started, it wasn't quite as comical as it became.
Yeah, it definitely as it went along.
So I know the first, again, I came in all these back, because I didn't start collecting comics until 87 or so. So I bought all these later on. And back, by the time I got into it, I came in around Justice League 20-something.
Okay.
Early 20, or late teens, early 20s. I think it was when Lobo showed up in this book.
Okay.
And I went back
make sense.
Backtracked all these other books once I started buying.
Now, just for reference, they were on Justice... Actually, I think the same day that this issue came out, Justice League number 6 came out.
Okay.
Yep.
So I believe then it wasn't quite as comical as it became... months
definitely got more. Actually, it was the next issue where it started becoming even more silly because the next issue was Moving Day.
Oh, okay.
Justice League number 7, Justice League International. Yeah, so it went from Justice League. It was number 6, number 7 was Justice League International, and that was Moving Day, which was just hysterically funny.
Yeah, that's where they started picking up the humor in it, and that's where it became the Bwahaha Justice League book.
Yep.
Which again, I'd read some of the Justice League books from prior, but I wasn't collecting until this point. I enjoyed when I picked it up the Justice League International I thought it was great.
Mm-hmm.
But see, now this isn't a Justice League podcast.
Well, I gotta. You said it, so I gotta say it now too. I have every single issue of Justice League, either in reprint form or original issue, from Justice League #1 in the '60s, all the way up through about a year ago, than Justice League New 52. That's when I finally just gave up. And but that many years, so of Justice League, I own and have read, and this is one of my favorite eras. Oh, so good.
Oh yeah. And then on the last page there, we have Miss Doreen Day. My notes on that: stupid Doreen.
And I guess since you're not going to be covering Firestorm again, I don't think, are you?
I'll cover them during this Janus Directive.
Okay,
and then,
but not Millennium, right?
Well, Firestorm shows up in the Suicide Squad issue, so I'm not quite sure how I'm going to cover that yet.
Well, I'm just going to throw this.
So go ahead and throw it out there,
because I don't think it's a major one for these people. Doreen is revealing Firestorm's identity to Chief Ferguson, who, by the way, turns out to be a manhunter. So she's revealing it to another bad guy, and it ends up not going. Thankfully, it doesn't get out to the general public. But could you do more damage, Doreen? I'm not sure. I'm really not sure.
Actually, I do have that note for the next issue about the whole manhunter subplot.
Yeah. I mean, she could just post a letter over to the Legion of Doom with this information, and that might do just about the same.
Really?
Anyway.
Yeah, that could almost make her one of Firestorm's greatest villains.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. She should be part of the Rogues Gallery.
See, there you go.
Mm-hmm. Now, just to give you some perspective, in the Firestorm issues leading up to this, for the previous several months, Denny O'Neil, who was the editor, had been writing either notes on the letters page or in his column from the Den, I think is what it was called, talking about the upcoming changes to Firestorm. He talked about how things are coming, how it's going to be different, how he's excited about it, and people should be ready. And it was very much like, what are they doing? Firestorm's been around 10 years. What are they going to change? We didn't know at this point. And it even says here in the next issue box where it says, join us next month for the new Firestorm. So a lot of mystery going on at this point for the reader.
Yes. And again, like I say, I got all this back issues because I didn't start until midway through the blank era Firestorms. But see, I'm not sure how fans thought of this as it came out.
Well, I mean, Firestorm wasn't selling as well as it had previously, like during the K-Anon, the Broderick and K-Anon years, but it was still doing reasonably well. Like, the sales had slouched, apparently. According to John Ostrander, the sales had slouched right before he took over.
Okay.
And basically DC said, you have 6 months to turn this book around. And he did, because this would be almost, a year later. And, actually, he did the Legends issues. Actually, then he took a couple issues off. And then he did it. So this is actually about the 6 month mark. But from what I understand, sales did go up. So this did help boost the profile of the character, which is what they needed. And we'll talk about the results of all this afterwards, I guess. But it was an exciting time. I actually remember being in a comic shop, asking the guy behind the counter, "What do you think's going to happen in Firestorm?" Because even as a kid, I was aware big changes were coming.
Right.
And he speculated a guess. And I thought he was nuts, and turns out he was dead on right. Now, I don't know if he had read about it in like Amazing Heroes or something like that, because I think they give the entire plot away in Amazing Heroes like a month before this actually came out. But he was dead on right.
Well, there you go.
Yep.
And that should cover Firestorm 64. Do you have any other comments on that issue?
Nope, other than this is going to be the longest episode of Task Force X ever.
Well, that's right. See, now it's my anniversary anniversary episode.
Double-sized.
Anniversary episode, that's all right. It can be a little long.
We'll return after these messages.
Feels good.
Hello, sweetie.
My name is Aaron Moss, a.k.a. Head. I love Star Wars, comic books, movies, reading, comedy, and most things geeky. Come join me monthly, well, mostly monthly, as I talk about the things I like and a few of the things I hate. Where, you may ask? Why, I'm at Head Speaks. I can be found on iTunes under Head Speaks, and at my website at headspeaks.com, and then click on Headcasts. Also, you can find me on Facebook and Google+, both under Head Speaks. Come, take a listen. This podcast is not endorsed or affiliated by Kid and Play. Though, that would be cool, huh? I'll go ahead and let Kid and Play finish the promo out.
Kalabak, Tassad, it is I, Darkseid. I command you to listen to the Who's Who podcast. Uncover the powers and weaknesses of the Super Friends so that I may destroy them.
Aquaman and Superman, Animal Man and Plastic Man, Firestorm and Nuclear Man, Batman and Hawkman, 2D Man and Hour Man.
Who are all these people, man?
They're all part of the DC Who's Who. Ultra Boy and Booster Gold, Lightning Lass and Hippolyta, Phantom Stranger, Etrick and Arisia and Woozy Winks.
Hey.
What?
What about that one guy?
What guy?
Mr. Pretzel, Mr. Lipstick, Mr. Mitzelfuzzle?
Mr. Mitzi's Pitlick?
Yeah, him.
He's also part of the DC Who's Who.
Who's Who, the definitive podcast of the DC Universe.
Available monthly at Aquaman Shrine, Firestorm Fan, and on iTunes and Stitcher as part of the Fire and Water podcast.
Well, let's go and move on to the next character profile we have, which is Slipknot.
Woohoo!
Go ahead and take that one, Shag.
Slipknot is the greatest villain that nobody cares about. I mean, this guy's a total mort, folks. He is a total loser. His power, he doesn't even have powers. He's ridiculous. He really is. So I'll describe him and then I'll talk a little more about it. Okay. Slipknot, alter ego Christopher Weiss, although for the life of me I have no idea where that was revealed. I don't even remember that. First appearance, Fury of Firestorm, number 28 from 1984. Why is that important, ladies and gentlemen? Because that is the very first issue of Firestorm I ever bought. So, I know at home you care, but whatever. It's important to me. Created by Jerry Conway and Raphael Kayanen. Team affiliations include the 2000 Committee, the Suicide Squad, and Cobra. Anyway, abilities, he has none, other than he is the master of ropes and has assassin training. His background was that he worked for a chemical company here in the United States, and he developed these special formulas to make these ropes more durable and had special like tricks and abilities, and he would use these later on when he got trained as an assassin and a mercenary and went out there and joined the 2000 Committee. He's hired by the 2000 Committee to take out Firestorm, and this is where we just got to discuss how ridiculous this character is. Firestorm is a living nuclear reactor. He has the ability to transmute any inorganic object into anything else, and he is held at bay by a guy with some strength. Now, they make this big deal about how Slipknot has organic rope, which makes no sense. Organic implies that it's alive. Now, admittedly, rope is usually made from, I don't know, whatever, plants, hemp, whatever you make it from. And at one point it was alive, but then it's not. And then it's dead, so it's now inorganic. If they take this to the next extension and say, oh no, because it used to be organic, Firestorm can't mess with it, then Firestorm can't mess with anything that used to be organic. Any piece of wood he can't transform, which doesn't make any sense. So it's this big conflict of the whole inorganic versus organic weakness on Firestorm that they just tried to fiddle around with to make it work for Slipknot, which makes it totally redunculous. Again, he's a guy with rope. You know what? He's got really cool lassos. He would be a great Green Arrow villain.
Yes.
He really would. And I credit that to Diablo Frank of the Marvel Superheroes podcast. He would be a great Green Arrow villain. Firestorm villain? Not so much. So Firestorm dispatches Slipknot. He bumps into him a couple times here and there. Slipknot then gets recruited for the Suicide Squad. Now, do you want me to go on and talk about Suicide Squad?
No, we're going to stop there because we'll be seeing more of Slipknot down the road here in a couple months.
And then you'll be seeing less of him! So, out in other media, Slipknot has not appeared yet. However, he will be making his live-action debut in an upcoming film called Slipknot and the Suicide Squad, and he'll be portrayed by actor Adam Beach. And I imagine the only reason he's in that movie will be related to his most famous Suicide Squad moments.
Yeah, again, Suicide Squad, they need someone to live up to the name.
Right. Perfect. Well played, sir. Well played.
One good thing about Slipknot is that he proves that even the great masterminds like Jerry Conway does have the bad idea occasionally.
He's not a bad idea. No, he's not.
Well,
he's just with the wrong hero.
Well, that's what I mean. For this,
yeah.
For being a Firestorm villain,
yeah,
it's a bad idea. Like you said, Green Arrow, maybe Batman, maybe Spider-Man over at Marvel.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, just real quick, I mean, Firestorm is Spider-Man.
Yeah.
He's DC Spider-Man. If for those of you folks who don't know, I'll keep this super short, but when Jerry Conway came to DC, he very purposely wanted to create a Marvel character in the DC universe, and he patterned it on Spider-Man. If you look at Spider-Man's history and Firestorm's history, they're very similar. Ronnie Raymond is essentially Flash Thompson, and Cliff Carmichael, who is the bully in Ronnie's life, is essentially Peter Parker. So they just reversed the roles. What if Flash Thompson got the powers and Peter Parker was the jerk? So that's where you get sort of the Firestorm with the sarcastic comments, the teenage angst. It's basically who he is. So Jerry Conway created a whole bunch of villains that are very Spider-Man villain-like. I mean, if you look at almost all of Firestorm's rogues gallery, they would work as Spider-Man foes.
The Weasel?
So, what's that?
The Weasel?
Absolutely would work. Vermin? I mean, come on. It's like, that's right in line there.
Yep.
So, Vermin meaning the Spider-Man foe. But anyway, so Slipknot, he's a total mort. But he's got a great costume. He really does. He's got these big billowy sleeves that hang open. His mask actually has like the lasso itself is part of the design aesthetic to his mask. So the opening in his face looks sort of like it's circled in a lasso. He's got these weird cutouts in his sleeve. In his ribs. So like his side of his ribs are exposed. So it's sort of like side boob for a guy. It's a bizarre but unique costume. And actually, I saw this guy who made a custom action figure for it, and it looks so good. So
I think I saw that on your page.
Yeah, that's a Firestorm fan thing.
Yeah,
and I love Slipknot because he's ridiculous. I love him for that reason. So, and he's become sort of like the token character to pick on the Fire and Water podcast.
Yeah.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing Slipknot and the Suicide Squad coming to theaters near you.
Oh, me too. Okay, let's go ahead and move on from Slipknot onto our next character profile, the Parasites. There was a couple different Parasites. I'm going to mention the first one just because it ties a little bit to the second one. The original Parasite was a pre-crisis. It was named Raymond Maxwell Jensen, who appeared in Action Comics 340 back in 1966, created by Jim Shooter.
Really? I did not know that.
Yep. I say that because the post-crisis, the one that we're dealing with here, is Rudy Jones, who was first appeared in Firestorm 58 in 1987, created by John Ostrander and Joe Rosowski.
Yeah, I have to, and I should just shut up and let you finish your profile, but I have a hard time with them saying that they created him, because it's just a revamp.
Right,
really.
Well, I'll get that here in just a second here. I didn't realize at the time. Okay. I don't remember.
I should shut up.
But no problem. Team affiliations: Star Labs, Suicide Squad, the Superman Revenge Squad, and the Secret Society of Supervillains. His powers is absorption of try that again. The absorption of energy, superpowers, and intelligence through physical contact. In his history, again, I'm going to do a brief history on the original pre-crisis. Raymond Jensen was originally a Superman villain. He was a plant worker at a research center. Believing the company hid the payroll in storage containers, he opened one up and was bombarded by energies from biohazard materials that was collected from Superman when he went out to outer space. He became the Parasite and became a recurring villain for Superman. Then came along the Crisis. That was all wiped out. And we were introduced to Rudy Jones, as I said, back in Firestorm 58. He was working at a janitor at Star Labs. Again, he opened up a container. He thought it held something valuable. Again, it's on Wiki, so I don't know how accurate it is. But there is a comment here that Darkseid caused him to look in the container, remembering the pre-crisis version. So, again, I don't remember if it was where that was ever explained at. It's been so long since I've read those. But yeah, according to Wikipedia, Darkseid remembered the pre-crisis version and wanted to recreate it. So he caused Rudy to think there was something valuable in the container he opened up. which according
I have to go back and reread that. I remember Darkseid appearing in it, but I don't remember the pre-crisis aspect, but it's been years since I've reread that issue.
Yeah, again, I'm pulling this from either Wikipedia, and then also I noticed on Mike's Amazing World of Comics, it said that the vat that he opened apparently had some of the remains of brimstone from the Legends series, and that's what caused it.
Interesting.
So again, I don't know if it was ever actually said, or again, it's, as you said, it's been years since I've read this. So, but he opened up the container, was exposed to radiation, which transformed him into the parasite. He showed up for a little bit in Firestorm, and then eventually he moved over to the Superman titles, and primarily became a Superman villain at that point, once again.
Mm-hmm.
His other appearances was in the Superman Red Sun book, All-Star Superman, Kingdom Come, Justice, JSA Liberty Files, Elseworlds, and the Superman Earth 1 Volume 2. On TV, apparently he showed up in the New Adventures of Superman back in the 60s, the cartoon.
Really?
That's what, yeah, again, wow. I'm pulling this from Wikipedia, so don't quote me on this. Oh. But yeah, apparently he was in the New Adventures of Superman back in the 60s, which I think I had the same reaction you did. He then showed up in Superman the Animated Series in the 90s, which I thought that was a really good series.
Oh yeah.
The Justice League, an episode of the Justice League entitled Secret Society, a couple episodes of Justice League Unlimited. He was in Smallville in an episode entitled Injustice, and an episode of Young Justice, the cartoon, called Performance. As far as films, he was in Superman, Batman, Public Enemies briefly, and then he was in the All-Star Superman movie. As far as video games, he was in the Superman Shadow of Apocalypse video game for the GameCube and PlayStation 2. He appears as a boss in Superman 64. He was featured concept for the... He was concept art for the console versions and as a main boss for the Nintendo DS version of Superman Returns. He was in DC Universe Online. He had a cameo appearance in Injustice Gods Among Us. He's in the background of Stryker's Island. And then the Rudy Jones version of Parasite appears as a playable character in Lego Batman 3 Beyond Gotham, voiced by Travis William, which is a great game. And that pretty much covers up Parasite, unless you have anything to add about him.
Well, just that, as you mentioned, the original version was a Superman foe. Then they reintroduced him in Firestorm, and then he became a Superman foe again. I mean, I remember there's a lot of people sort of torqued up about Parasite first appearing in Firestorm rather than a Superman book, like in post-crisis, that is. You know, they're kind of like bent out of shape, saying, no, he's a Superman foe. What's he doing in a Firestorm book? He doesn't belong there. And I mean, basically, it's fans raging before there was an internet. Is what it was. And unfortunately, we haven't changed as a fandom. We just have the ability to shout louder nowadays.
Yes.
So it's. I didn't take to the character back then, I guess, for some reason. Maybe because he was green instead of purple. I know that's incredibly stupid and minute, but he was purple for a zillion years, and then he was green in post-crisis just to make him different, and then he became purple again. So I don't know. For some reason, it just didn't click with me. But now, reading back, I love seeing the character again. It's exciting to see. So I'm definitely have to dig up that one where he becomes Parasite and with that Darkseid scene. And since Ostringer wrote Legends, he's the perfect person to have used Darkseid for a Legends type reference.
Right. Well, if that's it for Parasite, we'll go ahead and move on to Firestorm, annual number 5.
All right.
Mr. Shag, if you do the honors.
Absolutely. Now, I may go through this a little bit faster just because Suicide Squad's only in like the first half. So we'll just see as we go.
That's fine.
All right. Beautiful cover on this sucker. Firestorm, annual number 5. It has got it's an all sort of yellow background, and it's basically an atomic explosion. And in the heart of it is a figure who's standing with his arms up and his legs spread. And on the left-hand side is sort of the silhouette of Firestorm. On the right-hand side, it's a silhouette of a skeleton, which could represent death, but as you read the comic, you realize it represents Posar. And in the bottom, it says, "The End," with the big exclamation point, flaming words, by Ostringer and Brzezowski. Now, this sucker's $1.25, so it costs you an extra 50 cents on top of that 75 cents you paid for the other issue, so bring your pennies, kids. And this was released, I mentioned earlier, on July 21st, 1987. So if you want to get a pristine copy, hop in your DeLorean and head back, and again, bring that $1.25 if you want to get this comic. Cover, as I described it, was by Joe Brzezowski. Once you get inside, written by John Ostrander, pencils by Joe Brzezowski, inker Alfred Alcala, letter Duncan Andrews, colorist Shelley Iber, and then there's Denny O'Neil is the editor. And there's an interesting note here. It says thanks to Leonid Zelzer. Now I've Googled that, and I came up with nothing. Now I did come across a couple of folks if you spell the first name a little differently, rather than Leonid and spell it Leonid, you do find a few people named Leonid Zeltzer, basically leaving out the last O. And what it got me thinking was perhaps Denny O'Neil sought out someone he knew who was from Russia to give him some ideas to help, fill in the backgrounds. For example, maybe that institute you mentioned last episode or last comic, maybe that came from this Leonid guy. I don't know.
It's a possibility.
Yep. Now, just to give you sort of the idea of this issue at a 10,000-foot level, and really it's this whole storyline, Firestorm issue 62 to 64, annual number 5, and then the subsequent issue 65, which we won't be talking about. From a 10,000-foot level, this is a story of a hero that's dying. It's his last desperate attempt to leave the world a better place than it was when he came in. And this attempt has created conflict, as we discussed, and now it's ultimately going to result in death and rebirth. And that's where this story is going to lead us. So the story is called Ground Zero. As it begins, it picks up right where the last issue left off. We're in Times Square, New York City, and it is a chaotic scene of panic and confusion. It's a three-way battle between Firestorm and Firehawk, battling Suicide Squad and also battling the Justice League. And there's a whole bunch of recaps told through the first several pages. And it's not the Exposition News Network specifically, because it's all different news sources. You've got one guy talking into his voice recorder. You've got another guy, in a chopper. You've got another reporter who's just talking from a television. I mean, it's interesting the way all the recaps are done by different reporters. I thought it was fairly cleverly done. So you get a whole lot of Justice League versus Suicide Squad. And just to sort of touch on it, you get Guy Gardner fighting Multiplex. And Multiplex is absorbing the Green Lantern energy to create duploids of himself and beat up Guy Gardner, or attempt to. Then you have Blue Beetle versus Deadshot. Deadshot is purposefully missing Blue Beetle. Blue Beetle does not realize this, though, because Deadshot realizes if he were to kill Blue Beetle, the Wall would not be happy with him. So after a lucky shot by Blue Beetle, where Deadshot took a blast of concentrated air to the face, Deadshot has had enough of Blue Beetle's crap. Then you get Batman versus Captain Boomerang. Boomerang's, his usual braggart self and says, how about my boomerangs versus your batarangs? Well, the boomerang does defeat the batarang. However, as Batman points out, Batman is his only weapon, and then knocks out Captain Cold. It's a nice shot. You get Black Canary and Martian Manhunter versus Killer Frost. Then after Killer Frost is defeated, Martian Manhunter encourages Firehawk to join him in taking Firestorm in, but instead she takes out Martian Manhunter with her flames. You get Mr. Miracle versus Slipknot, and Mr. Miracle pays Slipknot the proper amount of respect due to him, which means none. And he promptly escapes from Slipknot's knots. And then you get into so those are all like sort of real fast-paced, fun little battle scenes. Then you get into some of the meat with the Suicide Squad, sort of emotional issues where Flag confronts Tolliver, because Tolliver has released Parasite. Flag is just dressing him up and down basically about it. Tolliver's freaking out. And Flag ultimately tries to knock some sense into Tolliver by whacking him around, which just makes you happy. Parasite breaks out, goes on an uncontrolled rampage, attacking both teammates, or quote-unquote teammates of the Suicide Squad, attacking friends and foes. Flag contacts the Wall, explaining the situation, and the Wall says, you need to take down Parasite, that's your new objective. And very ironically, Flag notes that, the one person most capable of taking out Parasite is their original target, Firestorm. Parasite then you get a whole bunch of scenes of Parasite just gobbling up superpowers. He steals Multiplex's power and then actually kills Multiplex. He then steals Black Canary's power, uses the combination of those two powers to duplicate himself, and then uses his canary cry like almost in stereo. He then defeats and discards Guy Gardner because he realizes the power is in the ring, and he can't even absorb his life force because the ring's protecting him, so he just chucks Guy Gardner. He defeats Martian Manhunter and feeds on him. And then two different parasites one feeds on Killer Frost and another feeds on Firehawk, which is a nice little parallelism there. Flag orders Slipknot to join him in taking down the parasite. Slipknot says, forget it, man, and he actually betrays Flag and tries to kill him. Well, Batman arrives on the scene and knocks out Slipknot. At this point, Batman is under a misconception. He believes Flag is there to help take down Firestorm from a heroic perspective. He's thinking that Flag has brought the Forgotten Heroes, which Flag goes, oh, no, I'm on my own. So Batman's like, all right, cool, let's team up. And they go have a super, super fun team up. And they're hanging out together. And the whole time, Flag is thinking to himself how he has to cover up Suicide Squad's existence and involvement. And doesn't want Batman to figure it out. So Flag and Batman quickly take down Deadshot. And Flag is ensuring that Deadshot does not blow their cover. Because he can't, at this point, he can't risk Batman knowing what the Suicide Squad is. At this point, pretty much the Justice League is down. The only people left standing are Batman, Blue Beetle, and Rick Flag. All of whom are normal humans. None of them have powers. The only other person who's still up is Firestorm. And for a brief moment, Firestorm toys with the idea of abandoning all of them, but realizes, who am I kidding? I'm not going to do that. So Firestorm then, gets up and battles the parasite. And there's a number of great panels and pages here where he keeps the parasite busy with some transmutation effects. Ultimately, he draws the parasite away from the city. Beetle follows in the Beetle's bug with Batman, Beetle, and Flag. Their thought is they're going to have to take on whoever wins this fight, Firestorm or Parasite. Firestorm ultimately defeats Parasite by using a bunch of shrapnel, electricity, fire, a few tons of concrete, and an amber enclosure. It's pretty kind of friggin' awesome. Then Firestorm leaves the Nevada desert at this point. He leaves New York for the Nevada desert at this point, where he says he wants to have his final sort of showdown with the United States government if necessary to discuss the nuclear disarmament. Batman insists that they follow Firestorm, and they're still in the bug. Blue Beetle absolutely refuses. He says, no way we're doing it. This is my ship. I'm not doing it. Firestorm just defeated Parasite and saved those people. He has earned the right to make his final stand where he wants. Batman is ticked off. He actually orders the Beetle to pursue. Beetle points out, dude, we're teammates. You're not my boss. And he says, I'm going down to help the wounded and arrest those bad guys. And by the way, how did Parasite get out of Belle Reve? And so while they're wondering that, Flag is standing there with them, sort of being very nervous about hoping they don't figure out how Parasite got loose. Now, that ends the Suicide Squad portion of this book here, on page 20-something probably.
21.
I lost 21. So I'm still going to cover the rest of the issue, but I'm going to pick up the pace a bit just because, we're moving on. So Firestorm flies off into the Nevada desert to await a response to his ultimatum he's given to the United States and the Soviet Union. He creates I completely forgot. There's this horrible segue with Doreen Day. She tells Chief Ferguson who Firestorm truly is, and she leaves, and Chief Ferguson basically dismisses her claim, saying, "Oh, she's just a disgruntled girlfriend." And then he goes back to his office, and he actually makes a very secretive phone call, saying, "I've got some information." With hindsight, we now know that's a Manhunter move. So, you know what? Manhunters and Doreen Day can all just go away as far as I'm concerned. So, in the Nevada desert, Firestorm has created a massive ice dome to protect him and also to give them some time stalling for Professor Stein and Ronnie Raymond to split, because this whole time, Professor Stein is still continuing to get sicker. He's having seizures, which has caused them to separate, to fission a few times, and they're underneath this ice dome, and Stein is resting, and Stein is very, very sick. He is on his last legs. Meanwhile, we find out the military is watching over the ice dome. The Russians are supposed to get first crack at Firestorm with Zastra and Pozar, and if they fail, the Americans will launch a nuclear missile. There's a very touching moment between Ronnie and the Professor. Stein expresses how much being part of Firestorm has meant to him, and how much his friendship with Ronnie has meant, and you really get the sense they're saying goodbye for the final time. And at this moment, Pozar attacks, shatters the dome, they transform into Firestorm, and then Pozar and Firestorm actually talk for a little bit. Pozar reveals that he doesn't want to fight Firestorm. He's being forced to because his family's being held by the KGB. They both sort of acknowledge that that's unfortunate, but that they're going to have to fight. There's no way around it. So there's almost a respectful meeting of the minds in that, okay, I understand you don't want to do this, but I also understand you have to, so okay, let's get to it. So then they get into the fight, and by the way, Pozar has some pretty cool abilities. He's wearing rocket red armor, which is Soviet Union armor, sort of a boxy Iron Man, if you will. He can shoot fire blasts from his hands. He can create these awesome lava geysers on the ground just by touching the ground, and he can fly. So as they're battling, the President Reagan, actually calls the military and orders the launch of the missile. He has ordered a nuclear strike on Firestorm and Pozar. So Firestorm is battling Posar. He transmutes the rocket red armor. Posar's own basically disintegrates the armor, so it's just Posar without the uniform anymore. And his own powers are burning him alive. Posar is dying. So Professor Stein suggests they transmute some of the sand into heavy water, which can operate as similar to a nuclear reactor to help Posar. Meanwhile, Stein has a massive seizure. They split Firestorm, so now it's just Ronnie, the Professor, and Mikhail Arkadin, who's pretty much down to just a skeleton at this point. And the missile soaring overhead, that it's moments from detonating, is a huge... The story's really built well to this moment, and Ronnie's trying to form Firestorm again, but Stein simply doesn't have it in him. In fact, Ronnie thinks Stein may already be dead. And Posar reaches out, he offers his hand to Ronnie and says that he will help, quote, lend his strength, whatever necessarily that meant, whether it means power or just psychic energy or whatever. So the three of them Ronnie links hands with Professor Stein and Posar, trying to form Firestorm as the nuclear missile detonates. There's a huge atomic explosion. Then the explosion itself begins to contract. It actually looks as if it's dissipating or being absorbed. There's one lone figure in silhouette seen in the center where the detonation occurred. Everyone's wondering who it is. Who survived? Was it Firestorm or Posar? There's a big dramatic build-up to it, and finally you get a full-page splash page, and it's Firestorm. But something's very different. He's leaner, he's taller, his features and his costume are less distinct. His face looks different. His features have a lot more sort of hawkish look, sort of a almost British royalty, like a British bad guy in a movie kind of thing. He has very sunken eyes. His cowl, the red cowl he wears around his head, has now sported fabric sideburns for some reason. And surprisingly, he's sort of surrounded in a flaming aura all around his body, which didn't used to be there. And then that is the conclusion of this annual, and quite frankly, is the conclusion of this era of Firestorm.
Great recap.
And it to be concluded in Firestorm number 65, which really is more of a new beginning for Firestorm, really. All right. There we go. What'd you think?
That was fantastic. That was a fantastic issue. It was a fantastic recap.
Oh.
It's Firestorm. What can I say? It's wonderful. In fact, the only reason I'm not doing a Firestorm podcast is because you've already doing it, and you're doing such a great job at it. But anytime I can touch on Firestorm with the Suicide Squad, it's just a 2-for-1.
Absolutely. Absolutely, man. So how do you want to do? You want to go page by page like you did before?
Yeah.
All right. I suggest we go faster, though, because there's a lot more pages
in
this one.
Yeah. One comment on the front cover when you were talking about it. There's behind the Firestorm and the skeleton thing, there was a skull in the background. Did you notice that?
That's true. That is true.
That.
Well, if you look on the other side, though, in the yellow, behind Firestorm, there's also a similar sort of... It's in white, and I can never tell whether that's supposed to be the silhouettes of a face. Like maybe it's supposed to be Posar's face on the right and maybe Ronnie's face on the left. I'm not sure. But it's so indistinct. It's I don't know.
I never got a face out of the left hand. Only thing I ever saw was the skull on the right hand side.
Right, but do you see the white I'm talking about?
Yeah, I
see
what you're talking about.
Yeah, it might be something. I don't know. For a long time, I just thought it was supposed to be Firestorm on the left, Death on the right. It's kind of how I read this. But now, as I got older, I'm like, oh, you know what? I think that's actually Posar on the right. Which would make more sense given what comes out of the story.
Oh, very much so. On the first page, I like the editor's notes of when this actually happened. Editor's note, a relic of a bygone age. You don't...
Oh, yeah. Caption boxes?
What the heck? Again, you've already commented on the different little fights. I enjoyed all those little fights they had there. The dialogue was fantastic. Like that on page 2 where guys fighting multiplex. He's like, beam us again, Scotty. We can always use an extra set of hands.
Well, and it's all the little tiny diploids. That's what I love. It's all the little ones.
Yeah, I love that. That was great. And I like how Deadshot's explaining via his thoughts why he's a master marksman, but he's missing Blue Beetle all the time.
Yep.
I thought that was a nice little touch to explain to the audience what's going on with that.
Yeah, and Blue Beetle has no idea
that
he's missing on purpose. And I love this era of Blue Beetle. Like,
oh, yeah.
As much as I love Paris Cullins as an artist, I really, really do. But for some reason, his work on Blue Beetle, I like Blue Beetle to look a little more serious. So Paris Cullins' Blue Beetle run was fun, but it didn't look quite serious enough for me. looked a little too cartoony. So stuff like this, where Blue Beetle is exactly how I want Blue Beetle to look. He looks still it's the same costume. There's absolutely nothing different, but it's drawn just a little bit more traditional, figure and shape. And I love the way he looks in this.
Yeah, and then the next page where Captain Boomerang breaks the Batarang, and then Batman just knocks him out anyways. I'm my only weapon.
I can't believe Batman even agreed to have a little contest of Boomerang versus Batarang. I guess just because he knew it would be the distraction.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. It was just, let me distract him. He got his boomerangs. Yeah. All right, here's mine. Now while you're concentrating on how good your boomerang is, let me show you who the real boss is.
He probably didn't even throw a real Batarang. That's probably like some sort of snacky feeds Ace the Bat Hound. And so it's like a Batarang cookie. You just toss it.
That would explain why I broke so easily.
Exactly.
And then on page 5, Slipknot tying up Mr. Miracle, tying up the man whose main thing is to get out of traps.
I mean, that was just perfectly orchestrated. Yeah. I mean, what better villain and hero to go up against each other? I mean, obviously Slipknot's not going to win, but it just fits really nicely.
Very much so. The guy that ties up people for his job, and the other one's to get out of being tied up.
Yep.
And again, we talked earlier about the artwork. I love the artwork on this page here. You can see the pain and confusion on Firestorm's face there on the bottom of it.
Yep.
And again, on page 6, again, you get the fear on Tolliver's face with Parasite bursting out of the back of the truck.
Well, I just like that Rick slapped him across the face.
I love that. Yeah, Tolliver's one that thinks he knows everything and thinks he's in charge, and Flag's like, I don't think so, stupid.
Yep.
And
I like how Parasite, when he burst out of the side of the truck, that ripped hole was perfectly round and just everything bent back just perfectly for him. No sharp edges. Didn't want to cut
that
it.
might hurt.
Right.
And then on page 8, the death of Multiplex.
Yep.
Though I believe he shows back up later on.
Absolutely does. Now, he doesn't show up as Danton Black.
Oh, okay.
Well, I shouldn't say that. We assume it's Danton Black. They may even said his name. I don't remember. But he doesn't come back, if I remember right, until the Jason Rush series of Firestorm. And at that point, I think he wears the costume at all times. Like, we never see his face. But I believe it's still supposed to be Danton Black.
Did they ever explain that I missed it, or did he just one of those because comics?
I like to use the X-Men answer in these questions, which is he got better.
Sounds good to me.
It works for me. And, there's the whole idea that it's a bunch of duploids, so who's to say he didn't kill a dude?
And see, that's my thought on diverging real quick back to the Flash. I think I forgot to mention, the Multiplex did show up on the Flash, the second episode. And at the end of that episode, supposedly he died. I'm wondering if it was just one of his duploids that died, and maybe he's still around. That's what I'm hoping.
All depends on whether they want him for watch the character for a future episode.
This is true.
That's what drives all of these things.
I enjoyed seeing Multiplex show up on the Flash. But
I mean, think about that. In the first few weeks of Flash, you get Multiplex, you get Ronnie Raymond, you get Plastique, you get Caitlin Snow. There's other people I'm forgetting. I don't remember. Professor Stein. You get all these characters. Jason Rush. So it's really misnamed. It shouldn't be called the Flash. I don't know why they're humoring this Barry Allen.
I agree.
It should be Firestorm. Guest starring the Flash.
I enjoyed seeing the Firestorm villain showing up on there.
Yep.
But moving on, page 10. Is it wrong that I like seeing Guy get knocked over by the Parasite?
You don't like Guy?
He has his moments.
I
like
Guy.
him at times.
I adore him.
Especially at this area. I liked him, but he was a bit annoying. So,
you know why I like him?
Why is that?
Because in everybody's life, there's somebody you don't like.
This is true.
There's somebody who's obnoxious or sexist or a bit of a pig or whatever. In fact, I'm probably somebody's Guy Gardner, actually, in real life.
I was thinking the same thing about myself.
So, not that I see myself in him, but just that I like that comics shouldn't always just be full of characters you like.
Oh, I agree.
It's sort of like J.R. Ewing on Dallas. You love to hate that character.
I was making the same comparison in my head just a minute ago.
Yep. So I love that there's a character out there that you just hate, but he's still a hero. He's still doing essentially the right thing. So I like that he's around because it fleshes out that world a little more.
Oh, very much so. And then on page 12, you made the comment earlier about when Batman rescued Flag from Slipknot, and he mentioned the Forgotten Heroes.
Oh, yeah.
I mentioned them briefly in some of my earlier episodes. And in fact, at some point, I will get to the Action Comics 552, where the Forgotten Hero shows up, and they make a reference to the original Suicide Squad.
Yep, it's got Animal Man and Dolphin.
Wow. Again, it's hot. But
oh, yeah.
Rip Hunter, if I'm not mistaken, he's part of that, who will be showing up on the Firestorm and his Atomic Friend show.
That's true. Played by Rory.
And then again, you mentioned that page earlier about the Parasite sucking the energy from Killer Frost and Firehawk. I did have a note about that. I enjoyed the way that page was laid out. On one side you had Killer Frost, and the other side you had Firehawk. Both of them being sucked.
Killer Frost's original costume is so cool.
Oh, yeah.
It's such a shame that they changed her costume over the years to a bathing suit, basically.
Yes, no, I agree.
And it looks like Caitlin Snow's wearing more of the bathing suit design, too, based on what we've seen so far.
Yeah, I was hoping maybe, something happened during the wedding or whatever, and she would get stuck in the wedding dress. But
that's what I said to my family when during the wedding. I was like, "See that dress? You might see it again." And now, don't get me wrong, Daniel Panabaker in a bathing suit, I'm okay with that.
Oh, definitely.
But there's just she just has a certain amount of class. The original Killer Frost.
Oh yeah, it's not. Yeah, a lot of your villainesses are skin tight clothing and showing almost everything. And again, don't get me wrong, I'm the last person to comment to say that's a bad thing. But something about the elegance of the dress that Killer Frost wore here at the beginning is just, I don't know, just spoke volumes about her, I thought.
And by the way, I should have been a little more nerd specific. I kept saying the original Killer Frost. This is technically the second Killer Frost by this point, but she looks and acts identical to the first.
Yeah, I don't think there was much change other than their name. And
right, exactly. That is exactly correct.
And then, you did mention about Flag and Batman knocking out Deadshot before you can rat him out. There on page 14. I like that, how they're stopping him from letting the cat out of the bag about the Suicide Squad.
That's great. And
then on page 15, nope, not going to do it. If they want to hit me again, they're going to have to bend down to do it.
Right. Very clever dialogue. Very clever dialogue.
As you mentioned earlier, very, very Peter Parker-esque, very Spider-Man-type dialogue. Even though this was Ostrander, not Conway, he still had that snappy dialogue, the Peter Parker.
Well, one of the things about Ostrander is he is a master of dialogue.
Oh, yes.
I had a chance to chat with him in an interview one time. It was really text-based, but anyway, the interview with him. It's over there on Firestorm Fan, by the way, if you want to go over there and just Google John Ostrander interview. And that's one of the things I told him was just he has such an ear for dialogue. And he kind of explained, he just basically said he hears the characters' voices in his head. And that's one thing that's, always kind of come naturally to him is the dialogue. And he does an exceptional job. Each character has always has their own unique voice. And it's really well done.
Oh, yes. That's one thing I love about Ostrander's work. I mean, between here, both Firestorm and the Suicide Squad, when he wrote the Spectre.
Oh, yeah. Such a good book.
Yeah, you hearing me. He was.
Oh, well, I mean, it's the same team that did the Elemental era. Firestorm went over and did Spectre, so nothing wrong with that.
Oh, not at all. It was great.
Then they did that one where the green guy from Mars.
I don't know what you're talking about. The green guy from Mars.
He looks like Parasite in this comic.
Oh, okay, yeah. I think I've seen him before.
Yeah, right.
And then on the next page, or page 17, where Firestorm is transmuting the powers being sent to him and changing it into oil and water and then forcing it back onto the parasite. I thought that was really nice.
Yeah, really good transmutation shenanigans going on here. Really, really effective, really entertaining.
Good work of their power. And then that middle page where Firestorm's flying up and away from the city, I just love the way that's drawn.
Really? See, that one doesn't work.
Really? Yes, I like that. It's like only showing like half his figure. The rest of it's just like blurred out, and he's flying away so fast. I don't know, just something about that. Just the only thing I don't care for is his eyes is kind of off.
Pointy. Yeah.
But the layout itself, I like the way it's laid out, the way it's drawn there.
I like the perspective. I mean, the buildings look nice. You really get a sense that he is just pouring on the speed.
Right.
which does work well. So I mean, I'm not trying to be hypercritical of it. It just didn't work for me like it did for you. But I mean, not everyone's going to have the same opinion on
This is
something.
true.
I mean, you're allowed to have your own opinion. It's wrong, but I mean, you can.
I'm used to being wrong. I'm married.
You and me both, brother.
And then the next page I'm saying the next page. It's actually a couple pages in. Page 21. Unless you have something before that.
Well, I just page 18, the Bug. Anytime I can see Blue Beetle, Ted Kord in the Bug, it just makes me happy.
Oh yeah, don't bring that up. It saddens me that he got killed off. I still can't get Jamie Reyes because I loved Ted Kord.
I like Jamie Reyes as well. I mean, I liked both of them. I think Ted's coming back, though. Isn't he the new 52?
I'm not sure.
Well, do you read Justice League 3000?
Yes, I am reading Justice League 3000. Yeah, so he is back. Okay. Him and Booster's back in that.
Right, which is hysterical.
Yes,
it's just ridiculously funny.
Oh yeah, no, I'm enjoying that series.
So much fun.
But on page 21, where again you commented earlier about Batman telling Booster Gold he tells Blue Beetle, you're going to do this, and Beetle's like, well, we're teammates. This is my Bug. I'm saying no. I'm not your subordinate. I'm your teammate with a mind and conscience of my own. I'm not going to do anything just because you or anyone else says boo, okay? Ascend to our wounded and find a way to put the parasite back on ice. And then we get the whole Rick Flag. Hope you don't look into this any further.
Right.
Like, most of all, I don't want to fight against you.
Right. At least not till Suicide Squad issue number 9.
Yes, it's coming down the road. And then the little interlude there. Yeah, I was going to mention that about tie into the Millennium storyline coming along in the Manhunters.
He could have just thrown her in a jail cell and threw away the key.
I don't think anyone would have minded.
And to be fair, this is one of her last appearances. I mean, she's only going to show up a few more times in the history of Firestorm, so, bye-bye! Na-na-na-na. Na-na-na-na. Anyway.
And then when they're in the generals talking in the fallout shelter there, I like how they're answering the questions without actually repeating the questions.
Thank you for mentioning that. I meant to put that in my recap. I thought that was really cool. I agree completely.
Without having as much clutter saying, a reporter asking a question than him answering, he's answering it at the same time. So I thought that was really, again, Ostrander doing what he does best. Writing and doing the dialogue is just fantastic.
Absolutely.
And then on page 24 and 25, as you commented, Ronnie and the Professor, it's like they're getting ready to die.
Yeah.
Making their peace, showing some flashbacks, if you will. Very touching scene.
Yep. That hug goodbye is just heartbreaking.
Again, I have a little bit of disadvantage because, again, I came back. When I started around 74, I want to say.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
Where they...
One issue away.
They'd found the Professor.
I cry like a little girl every time I read that last page. I think it's issue 75, isn't it? Or is it 74? Where they find Stein.
I think I got 74 and then I got 75. I think 74 was the first part of that storyline.
Yeah, I think it's like 74 is like the sand-based character. And you think is Stein, it turns out not to be, but then they find Stein anyway.
Yeah, that was my first issues of Firestorm that I actually bought. Like you, I knew Firestorm from the Super Friends cartoon. I'd seen an occasional Justice League story here and there, but again, I didn't start collecting until, as I said a couple of times, 87 or so. So I slowly started dipping into characters. I found those issues of Firestorm on the newsstand. I picked them up, and oh god, where I get more at? So I backtracked and bought them all. So I found all the issues of Firestorm and ended up buying them. It took me a couple years, but yeah, but
when they find Stein alive, I mean, I'm just blubbering like a baby when I read it. Still do every time I read that issue. And when Ronnie just goes, like the professor's like, "Who are you?" and he goes, "I'm a friend."
Yeah. Oh, that was.
And Martin, and it's just like, I'm getting verklempt just thinking about it. Oh my goodness. And when Ostrander wrote this comic, with 75 still, 10 issues away. When he wrote this one, he was not intending to bring Stein back.
Okay, so I wasn't aware of that.
Stein was going to die and be gone.
It's interesting.
Yep.
Moving on to get done with this issue, page 28.
Yep.
Where Ronnie's sealing up Posar's heat port so he can't fly and he crashes to the earth. I like the way he thought of that, and he's like, let me see, you using that to fly? what if I stop you from flying?
Yep.
But again, these whole couple pages here where they're fighting and Posar's using his different powers, it's fantastic scenes. And then
I love the lava guys.
Oh yeah, that was great. I mean, he's got a lot of powers. Then on page 29, I really don't like Mr. Zastro.
Meaning you just they've effectively written him, so you don't like him, or you just don't think it's written?
No, I think they wrote him to be a character to hate, and they did.
Okay,
he did a great job of making you want to see this guy die.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, no, he was a great character. It's just I don't like him as we're not supposed to.
Perfect.
And then on page 30, I like how we're seeing all the primary cast members watching Firestorm and Posar's battle on their different TV sets. You got Ed and Felicity, and then Doreen, and then Ferguson, all just watching what's going on.
Sort of like the death of Superman.
Yes.
Everybody was watching that on TV too.
But yeah, just the expression on their face. I don't know. I enjoy that.
Yep.
And then on my next notes on page 32, where Firestorm's in pain. Mm-hmm. To me, that's very reminiscent of when he got turned into the were-hyena or whatever it was. From way back in the day.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah, I saw that. I'm like, that looks very familiar to that.
Yep. I'll tell you something on these pages that I struggled with back in '87, and I still struggle with this to this day. Is Posar at this point? He's basically a chattering skeleton.
Yes.
And it looks really doofy.
Yeah.
I mean, with Ghost Rider, for some reason, it works. With this, it just looks doofy. You know, it's like, how is his bones even holding together at this point?
The fire.
You know, fire tendons, really? I mean, it's like, yeah, what is going on here? And then when they put him in the water, he just looks like a silly skeleton taking a bath. So I've always struggled with that.
Yeah, I can see that. Though on page 34, the most left bottom panel there, where you commented where Ronnie is trying to bridge between the two. There, he looks almost like a human body,
right?
With a little more defined than just a skeleton. But
which is weird.
I do see your complaint about that, about how's he being held together.
Yeah.
And then on page 35, the detonation page.
Oof.
There's no real words for it.
Yeah.
It speaks for itself. It's just, you see the reaction of everyone watching it, and in the very last panel, you see a figure right in the middle of it come walking out.
Now I'm going to take the seriousness away for just a second and bring a little levity into it, I guess. But could you imagine being one of those reporters in the trench reporting on this thing, and then they're like, they launched a what? I'm only a few miles away from this thing. You are kidding me.
What did Reagan do? No.
Right, exactly. It's like, no, I have a wife and children, no. And then they all turn into the Hulk. Yeah.
Yeah, apparently they didn't read Marvel Comics from back in the day.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
And then, as you comment, page 38, the new Firestorm. I really like the way, it's different, but it's the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
The sleeves aren't quite as puffy. As you said, he appears to be taller, longer, leaner.
Yep.
His face is not as friendly.
Mm-hmm.
But again, this is the era I came into, so I really enjoy this era. But having said that, I enjoy this entire 105-issue run of Firestorm, so...
Yeah. Well, as a kid, I remember being confused. Because you read it, and he's Firestorm at the end, you're like, oh, okay, well, Firestorm won. But wait a minute. He looks a little bit different.
Right.
But not very much. It's like, at what point can you tell the differences between just the artist interpretation and how much has really changed? Because, Brzezowski wasn't really doing a lot of, detailed work here anyway.
Right.
So, but you really gotta, it's with hindsight that I can see the other elements about him being leaner and taller and the costume having less details. Like Firestorm's costume has a lot of different lines on it. Well, they're all gone at this point.
Yeah.
The sideburns are there, which is utterly bizarre. Although I like it better with the sideburns. But where did those come from? The sunken eyes. The flaming aura around him.
Yes.
I didn't even pick up on that till I was older. Like, oh, that's some of that's Posar's powers coming through there.
Yeah.
And for those of you who aren't, who haven't read the issues and aren't going to bother, what you've got now is a brand new version of Firestorm with a new consciousness, and it is now the melding of, Ronnie Raymond and Mikhail Arkadin. And Firestorm himself is what we call a blank slate era, which means he has no memory, he has no sense of self. He's a blank slate, literally.
No real personality at this point either.
Yeah. So for like the next 64 to 85, next 20 issues, it's sort of a journey of discovery as Firestorm begins to discover who he is for himself, and Ronnie and Mikhail have to deal with being part of the Firestorm entity but not having any control.
Yes.
And then there's a whole bunch of Russian stuff too.
Well, again, I recommend anyone that enjoys Firestorm to definitely check out, I want to say these issues, but by God, I want to say check out every issue, because, again, there was an occasional dud here and there, but the first 5 issues and then these 100 issues of this run overall was a fantastic read.
Oh yeah, and this in particular is some really interesting ideas, that this whole Russian element, because what Ostrander did was he stepped back from it and said, okay, what first of all, he wanted to have it connected to current events, and nothing's more current in the late 80s than sort of the Soviet Union, United States Cold War going on.
Most
there.
Definitely.
And Ronnie, Firestorm is the nuclear man. So what makes more sense than anything other than doing something with Russia involved? And how, what an interesting idea to make Firestorm part Russian, part American.
Yeah.
That's just, at the time there was a lot of people that didn't like the change, but with the power of hindsight, it's like, wow, that's really clever. And when I got a chance to talk to Ostrander, I asked him about that, and he basically said, because I talked about how he really focused on social, sort of socially conscious stories. And this is a quote here. He said, I wrote on topics that interested me, that I thought would make for good stories. It harkened back to Denny O'Neil's run on Green Lantern, Green Arrow, which fused social consciousness with great superhero stories. Denny, as an editor, later advised me that our first job was telling a good story. We can say anything we want, but first we have to tell a good story. That's what the folks pay their money for. I wasn't looking to be relevant. I was looking to make stories more interesting, to relate to the world around us and what was happening at the time. And this is a perfect example of what's going on here. A couple other things worth noting, too. When I talked to him, I asked him about the melding, and this is sort of jumping ahead with Suicide Squad, but it relates to Firestorm, characters like Simon LeGrieve, who becomes an ongoing character in Suicide Squad. Well, he becomes an ongoing character in Firestorm as well. And I asked Ostrander about that as far as like the passing back and forth of characters. And he said, I liked universes that had characters from one book crossing to another, even on an informal basis. I always thought that was a good idea and more fun for the reader. Also in Suicide Squad, we had a tendency to kill off baddies now and then. You couldn't always go to another book's writer or editor and say, hey, I'd like to use so-and-so and kill them off. Do you mind? Whereas on Firestorm, I controlled the book. And if I wasn't willing to kill off some of my own cast, why would anyone else let me do it?
Right.
So that sort of also explains why he killed off so many Firestorm characters. And when I asked him what some of his favorite issues were on his time in Firestorm, one of the ones he said was, I really enjoyed the storyline leading up to the death of Martin Stein, and our first revamped visual on Firestorm, which wound up in the annual that year. So this is some of his favorites run on the series. So, and it makes a nice companion piece to Suicide Squad. Same writer, sort of the same unit. Because by the end here, he's writing what? Suicide Squad, Firestorm, and Manhunter. And is that right?
Yeah, I believe so. And Spectre, but it did tie into it. But I mean,
but Spectre happened after Firestorm. I'm
it
thinking
after
about
Firestorm?
He had his own little kind of side corner of the universe at this point. So it would have been Manhunter, Firestorm, Suicide Squad, and I'm trying to remember, he wrote Captain Atom for a little while, just 4 issues, and that was at the end of the series. But
did he write? Because if I'm not mistaken, Captain Atom ties into the Janus Directive, if I'm not mistaken.
Probably, I think he does. Is it? That one had Checkmate, Suicide Squad, Firestorm,
Manhunter.
Did it have Manhunter?
Yeah, I believe it had Manhunter.
That would make sense. And I think Captain Atom was part of it.
Yeah, I believe he had. I believe one issue of Captain Atom tied into it, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, could very well be.
We'll get to that here at some point.
All good stuff. All good stuff.
Oh yeah. Well, that ties up, I guess, the Firestorm Annual number 5.
Yep.
And the last appearance the crossover of the Suicide Squad and the new Firestorm.
Woo!
Anything else you want to add to that there? than what we've talked about, Shag?
No, just a very exciting time, and I love the way that the Suicide Squad was worked into the story. I thought it was a lot of fun. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here to talk about it.
Oh, I'm very glad to have you.
Thank you very much.
I've been trying to get you for a while.
And unfortunately, one of the downfalls of having me on a show is I tend to run on at the mouth. So, as we said, this is a double-sized, bordering on triple-sized podcast.
Well, that's right. I expect it to be, that's why I invited you on to have someone run at their mouth. So, that's why you're here.
Well, happy first anniversary.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And before we get going, go ahead and plug some of your stuff and let people know where they can find you on the inner tubes.
Oh, well, sure. Thank you. Again, you can check out the Fire and Water podcast. Also on that feed is worth mentioning, we do a Who's Who podcast where we go through Who's Who, the definitive directory of the DC Universe. We go through it issue by issue, literally page by page. And it's proved to be a lot of fun and is probably our most popular podcast on the feed, actually. We also do one dedicated role-playing games. We do some on Power Records, things like that. Anyway, you can find all that on Stitcher and iTunes under Fire and Water Podcast. You can also find the details on that at firestormfan.com. I'm also part of the Who True Freaks podcast, which is a Doctor Who podcast on the Two True Freaks Network. I am one of the members of the Legion of Super Bloggers, which is a site dedicated to the Legion of Superheroes. You can find me on the social medias. I'm out there as Firestorm Fan on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Instagram, and Tumblr. And I make the occasional appearance on as a guest on shows like Views from the Long Box or Marvel Superheroes Podcast, The Flash Podcast, Dead Both and Spies, Secret Origins, Batgirl to Oracle, Batgirl Barbara Gordon Podcast, and just a few other ones here and there, because apparently I try and do everything I can to record more podcasts and not spend time with my family, near as I can tell. So that's me on the web.
Well, thank you very much for joining me today, Shag. It was a pleasure having you.
It was a pleasure being had.
Anyways, well, let's go ahead and hear from another friend of the show.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
The Ultraverse Network begins now. Over 20 years ago, Malibu Comics debuted the Ultraverse. It may not have lasted long, but the creativity and quality of its titles and creators caught many readers' imaginations when it first appeared and in the years since. This network of fans celebrates the fun and excitement of the Ultraverse and its awesome writers, artists, and characters. Featuring 3 ongoing podcasts covering a variety of topics including Nightman and Solitaire, our blog will feature regular coverage of the Strangers, Sludge, Firearm, Ultraforce, and all your other favorites. Look for Ultraverse Network on iTunes and visit our website at ultraversepodcast.com. We are giving Ultraverse fandom a jumpstart.
Hey, Jeff.
Hey, Mike.
Man, it sure is great to be back from crisis to crisis after all this time. It's been a busy year for both of us.
For very different reasons.
But now we're ready to cover the post-Death and Return Superman stories.
Yeah, and we're about to start the books that came out in 1994, which means that we have so much to look forward to, like Bizarro's World.
The Battle for and Fall of Metropolis.
Superman Doomsday, Hunter, Prey.
Worlds Collide.
Well, you're looking forward to that one.
Oh, bite me.
0 Hour.
0 Month.
And right there at the end, we have Dead Again.
And don't forget the Elseworlds annuals as well.
Well, most of them anyway.
Yeah, some of those really did suck, don't they?
But From Crisis to Crisis is back. New episodes will drop on Thursday, just like before.
You can find the show at the Superman homepage, www.supermanhomepage.com, as well as at the Superman Podcast Network, which is at www.supermanpodcastnetwork.com.
And we also have a Facebook page that you can like by going to www.facebook.com/FromCrisisToCrisis, a Superman podcast.com. Is it .com on there? No, it's not. No .com. Forget that.
So From Crisis to Crisis is back, folks, and better than ever.
Well, I'm better than ever. You need some work.
Oh, shut up.
No, you 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 shut up.
From Crisis to Crisis, a Superman podcast, covering the post-crisis adventures of Superman, one half month at a time. Every Thursday at www.supermanhomepage.com and www.fortressofbaileytude.com.
And we're back with Suicide Squad, issue number 4. This issue The cover date was August of 1987, but again, as I keep saying, you can't get it then. If you want to buy this fresh off the stand, what you need to do is take 3 quarters with you, that's right, 75 cents, and go back to May the 26th of 1987 to buy this fresh off the stand. This was a 22-page story entitled William Hell's Overture. The cover credits, the penciler was Luke McDonnell, and the inker was Robert Lewis. The writer, as always, was the incomparable John Ostrander. The penciler, once again, the fantastic Luke McDonnell, inker Robert Lewis, letterer Todd Klein, and colorist Carl Gafford. And this issue was reprinted in the Suicide Squad Trial by Fire trade paperback from 2011. Again, as always, all this information comes from Mike's Amazing World of Comics. Check it out. It's a great site. But anyways, enough with that. Let's get on with this issue. And again, from Mike's site, I'm going to read the synopsis. William Hell, a masked vigilante in Central City, has been stopping street-level crime. However, Hell is allowing white criminals to go free and making them join his Aryan Empire organization. Amanda Waller briefs the Suicide Squad on the issue. Deadshot, a former friend of Hell's real identity, James Heller, explained how Hell's parents were killed in a riot. Hell then followed in the footsteps of his grandfather, a former Nazi. A great guy. The squad then sets up William Hell. Captain Boomerang joins his organization, and then Deadshot impersonates Hell at a rally. The real Hell challenges Deadshot, and the squad ensures that he loses. Deadshot unmasks Hell as Heller, then Flag shoots Deadshot with blanks. The crowd then believes William Hell is dead, and Heller is taken to police custody and discredited. Now for my thoughts on the issue. First off, we start with the cover. The cover shows William Hell walking down the streets. He's got a crossbow in his hand, and behind him the city people are rioting. There's flames in the background. We see Bronze Tiger, Captain Boomerang, Deadshot, and Rick Flag standing in front of the crowd and behind Hell looking at him. The question on the cover says, "Who brought a city to its knees?" As usual with the Suicide Squad, I like this cover. Very, very much indicative of what's inside. I forgot to mention below William Hell is a skull and crossbones in white that he's stepping on. His shadows looming over it. It's a very nice cover. Like I say, it wraps up what's going on in this issue. Very dramatic. That's one thing I like about most of these Suicide Squad issues. They have very good covers. And while it may not depict an actual scene in the comic, it gives you, again, as I've said, the sense of what's happening in this issue. A great cover. Then we move on to the inside of the story. We start out, as I mentioned, in the synopsis. We see these criminals robbing a liquor store, and all of a sudden they get stopped by some dark shadow that swoops out of the darkness. He blows up the car, and he beats the snot out of the black guy that's... Actually, I guess he beats on all the gang members. And he's telling the guy, "Do you know where the Aryan Empire has its headquarters, punk? Answer me, damn you, we haven't much time." The guy's, "Yeah, sure, it's 7-0. He's like, "Take the other white kid and get there and sign up. It's that or the cops." He lets the white boys go and turns the, looks like from the artwork, maybe a black kid and maybe a Hispanic or something, I can't quite tell, over to the cops. The cop says, "Well, I heard there was 5 of them." And the cop's like, "This is all I found, officer." And one of his friends like, "There was 2 more. The cops tell him to shut up. Then the reporters show up and they ask him, why is Hell doing this? And he's like, "I'm only a common man, fighting for the sake of other common men in this troubled community. Hopefully I can be a symbol to them, so that by uniting together, we can overcome those who destroy our hope, our peace, our way of life. Now if you'll excuse me," as he swings out into the night. Again, these first couple pages, again, I really like the artwork. It's a darker artwork than your normal superhero comic, but it's consistent with what you see in the Suicide Squad. Like I said, it's a little hard to tell. Like I said, one guy's a black guy that Hell's beating up. I can't quite tell. It looks like maybe Hispanic, maybe, or Middle Eastern. I can't quite tell. again, they're fighting at night, so it's a little harder to tell kind of races usually. That, and I suck at telling races apart, especially when you get, your skin tones. But yeah, no, it's a great little fight scene here. William just walks up and just basically just slaps a couple of these guys. This one guy knocks another one down. And I like how to the cops, William seems like a very upstanding citizen. I'm saying citizen, a very upstanding vigilante. And he's lying about how he only caught the 3 guys, how he didn't see the other 2. Which kind of lets us know that while he may be a good guy, an anti-hero, whatever you want to call him, he's not a very good guy. There's something wrong with his morals, at least in my opinion. I mean, the fact that he let the white guys go as long as they joined this Aryan group, and he lies to the cops about it. We then have William Hell getting into a limo, and his limo driver drives him home. I'm just calling it a limo. It's actually maybe like a town car. I'm not quite sure. It's really dark in this, and it's kind of hard to make out. I can't quite tell if it's a limo or a town car. But anyways, his driver drives him home as he changes from William Hell and becomes upstanding citizen James Heller. Then when Heller goes in the house, the driver gets out and unlocks the trunk, and who do we find in the trunk? But the driver. Dun dun dun! The fake driver pulls the real driver out, tells him that he needs to pick up Heller tomorrow as normal, gives him the rest of Heller's instructions, and after the driver leaves, the fake driver starts pulling off his hat and mustache, his hair, and basically does a Mission Impossible and pulls off the mask, and we see it's a woman in a purple flowery kind of suit. I'm calling it a flowery suit. This I know from, they haven't mentioned it yet, but I know that this is actually a hero called Black Orchid, which we'll find out more about later. Again, not much to really say. I mean, not a lot of dialogue here, just ordinary mundane stuff where Heller is telling his driver stuff that he needs done, and then the driver is basically, the fake driver, who we find out is Black Orchid, is relaying the information to the real driver, who he had tied up in the trunk. Again, while it's pretty pedestrian commentary, it's just stuff that that we need to know and that that needs to be relayed. Ostringer does a great job of doing this, what I would call ordinary conversation. Part of what I love about the Suicide Squad is Ostringer's writing and the way he can write dialogue like nobody's business. And again, as I've been saying for the last 4 issues, and then the 6 issues of Legends, those are different artists and Legends, but as I've been saying this entire podcast, great art. I love this artwork in this. I mean, I can go all day about the artwork, but just magnificent. We then go to Amanda Waller, basically giving us and the Suicide Squad information on who we're dealing with. Basically, she tells us that his name is W. James Heller, a very rich and very right-wing businessman. He basically is either covertly or openly funded many white, survivalist, neo-Nazi, and or KKK groups, and founded one of his own called the Aryan Empire, which William Hell mentioned earlier. And then she shows a picture of William Hell, saying he's a new mass crime fighter. He's about to clean up the area of street crime, drug pushers, and so forth. And just lets the team know that he arrests have, however, mainly consisted of minorities, blacks, Asians, and Latinos. Sitting around listening to Waller, we have Cronus, who is Ray Palmer, the Atom villain, Captain Boomerang, Deadshot, Bronze Tiger, Enchantress, Rick Flag, and I'm not sure if that's Karen Grace or June Moon. I would guess June, but we'll find out here in just a minute, I'm sure. And then Captain Boomerang, in his indomitable style, he's sitting there saying, when Waller's saying that, he mainly arrests minorities, blacks, Asians, and what have you, he's like, well, it only stands to reason, don't it? I mean, it's a well-known fact they do most of the crimes, isn't it? And Bronze Tiger, I like this, without missing a beat, he's like, the only known criminals I see here, my man, are white. Boomerang's like, I'm talking about street crime here, Tiger, my lad. We're different, aren't we? I mean, I don't see no bloody abo being an artist like old Cronus here, can you? And again, Albo, I believe, is an Australian derogatory term for black people. Because, again, while Boomerang is one of the stars of our show, he is a bit of a racist. And I like that about Boomerang. Well, I don't like that he's a racist so-and-so, but I do like the fact that his character's consistent, and he keeps, he's the rogue you love to hate, if you will. But anyway, we also find out about Black Orchid, which was the, again, I said her name earlier, she was the one that is impersonating the driver. Amanda lets us know that, Black Orchid's part of the advanced team, and she found out Heller and Hell are the same man. And I like this. Try this again, kids. Deadshot sitting there, and, Waller saying that, he's using his racist ends. And we, the Suicide Squad, has been asked to deal with him. And Deadshot's like, let's just shoot him. That's very Deadshot. I mean, he takes the most direct manner he needs to accomplish a mission. Someone's being a jerk, someone's, in your way, we shoot him. That's very consistent characterization for Deadshot, for Floyd. I like that. Amanda lets them know that, they can't do that. Otherwise, they'll make him a martyr to their... Try that in English. They'll make him a martyr to his cause. And at this point, we find out that apparently Floyd and Heller knew each other growing up, which gives a little backstory, if you will, on Floyd. And the next page or so, we get Heller's background, which I like. It gives a little insight to the villain, if you will, of the piece. In short, Heller was a rich kid, very competitive, the best at what he had to do. And one day, when driving, his parents took a wrong turn into the middle of a race riot, and Billy, little William Heller, was the only one to survive the attack. Went to live with his grandfather, James Heller, who apparently sold stuff to the Nazis. Not a very good guy. But anyways, again, so we find out a little bit about Billy's background. When his grandfather died, he got all the money and the holdings and everything. So that's how he became who he is. And I like this, because he started out, the way the picture's drawn of the kid, he seems kind of snobbish and very much of a, if you will. And then we go to the crux of the plan. Amanda tells us that they can't just defeat or unmask him, they got to discredit him. And again, I like this. Again, if you're a new reader, Cronus kind of fills you in briefly as to the backstory. He's like, I help it works, I keep my trap shut, and my sentence commuted to time served, right? Which basically, in a nutshell, if this is your first issue of the Suicide Squad, it tells you a little bit about what's going on and what the story of him is. And then on the next page, they begin their caper to try to capture or discredit Heller. I like this. Boomerang and Bronze Tigers acting like they're robbing a... I'm not sure if it's an armored car. Yeah, it's an armored car. And like Boomerang's dialogue, he's like, Wipeout, me old mate. I, Captain Boomerang, am glad I returned to Central City. With my old nemesis, the Flash, no longer here, I am free to use me trick boomerangs and amazing skills to knock over this bleeding armored car. And Bronze Tiger basically calls him out and is like, write your dialogue. It's kind of funny. And then when Bronze Tiger talks, he's using very much ethnic. Heller shows up and Boomerang's like, oh no, it's William Hell. And Bronze Tiger's like, shoot, I sure didn't plan no rumble with him. Very, very blackish, if you will. Ebonics is what I'm looking for. Where I thought of in a while. A nice little fight scene where Heller takes out Bronze Tiger. If only who knew he was dealing with, that Bronze Tiger could wipe the floor with him. And again, William Hell, again lets Boomerang go free, tell him to go check out the Aryan Empire. And he just turns over Bronze Tiger, who's in disguise of Wipeout right now. And the cops that showed up is actually Rick Flag and I'm not sure who the lady is. I'm not sure if that's supposed to be Black Orchid. I'm assuming Black Orchid. And then here we join the scene a couple of days later at Billy Heller's rally. And he's going on about, civil rights, and we've seen the institutionalization of the welfare state. We've seen the pervasiveness of drugs and pornography. We've seen the standards of our universities eroded to accommodate the illiterate and uneducable. It's kind of funny. I'm having a problem saying that word when it's talking about people that can't read. And you say basically instead of them being raised up to our level, we're being reduced down to theirs. And we got some black people in the crowd rioting. Yeah, you down off that podium, sucker. And as he's speaking, all of a sudden we see the shock on his face as William Hell swings onto the scene. And he's like, "I, William Hell." And the crowd starts chanting, "Hell, hell, hell, hell." And William Hell takes the podium and basically starts giving a revised speech, saying that the only way we're going to make it is we stick together, black, white, Latino. Like William Hell, again, in quotes, his little speech here basically said we all need to stick together, and that basically Heller, whatever he's up to, is not for their best interest. That no matter what your race is, that the poor need to stick together against the whites. He's got an impassioned little speech here, and then all of a sudden the second Heller, the original Heller, shows up. Or not Heller, but William Hell, calling him a lie, an imposter. And the real William Hell's like, "Ladies and gentlemen, the man you've been listening to is a fraud. I am the real William Hell." And Boomerang's like, "You know what? You both look real to me. Why don't we do a test of skill?" And of course, he relates the story about William Tell shooting the Boomerang relates the story of William Tell shooting the apple off his kid's head. And I believe it's the second, our imposter, William Tell, is saying, "Fine, we'll shoot one off yours." And they tie Captain Boomerang to a tree, pet an apple on his head. I like the way this page lays out here. Boomerang's like, "Bloody hell, this ain't in the bloody script." And they grab his arm like, "Ow, ow, ow, it's attached, you bloody drongo." So they tie him to the tree, and first, the imposter, who we know is an imposter, the first one that was preaching about how the blacks and whites need to stick together, he shoots first and shoots the apple. And then the second, the one that showed up, who is the real William Hell, makes a shot, and it misses. And I like this look on Hell's face. He's like, "Missed? But I couldn't." He's just shocked that he missed. And that's when the imposter grabs him and says, "But you did, because you're not the really," try that again. He says, "But you did, because you're not really William Hell, you're James Heller," and pulls his mask off. And the fake Hell says that Heller and his men captured him, and they wanted to twist his words and use him for their own evil ends, if you will. And as he throws William Hell to the ground, try that again. As he throws Heller to the ground, some guy pops up, looks like one of Heller's men. He's got a white T-shirt and a half face mask, kind of like Zorro, but it's red. Mask on his head. Shoots, again, the fake Hell in the back. And all of a sudden he disappears in a cloud of smoke, it looks like. It looks like a smoke bomb. And he vanished. So the cops, they can't grab the fake one, so they grab Heller. And they're like, Heller's trying to say it's a setup, and they're like, "Oh, if we don't get you out of here, these guys are going to tear you apart." The ambulance shows up, takes away the dead body. Well, he's not a dead body yet, but as they're taking away, one of the doctors, or the paramedics, says, "Well, I've seen people recover from wounds like this, but not many." So they load him up and take off. In the ambulance, like this Deadshot sits up and takes the mask off. And he lets us know there's an explosive charge in the front of the costume. And that's why he got, he's able to get shot. And then as the rest of the team meets up, Boomerang, Nightshade, and Flag. Flag being the one that shot Deadshot because he still has the shirt on. We find out what happened. Apparently they used Cronus' device that he had to freeze time, and it allowed them to go over and it froze time in that general area, and they were able to move the arrow up just a little bit so it missed Boomerang. And like this last scene here on this page, Boomerang's like, "When Heller shot this bolt, what about you?" Deadshot's like, "Couldn't. Machine's unstable. Threatened to fuse the solid on this first try. Told me I didn't need it. That I could do it with my eyes closed. Did too." Boomerang's like, "What?" So apparently they used the machine to freeze time and made Heller's bolt miss. And when Deadshot took his shot first, he did it with his eyes closed. Because that's how darn good Deadshot is. And then Nightshade and Flag are talking in the truck. And again, I want to read a little bit of this page. Because again, I love John Ostrander's writing on this. And there's a lot of bubbles on this page, a lot of talking. But it's very good dialogue. Nightshade's talking to Deadshot first. She's like, "Nice feel of the patriotism in that speech, Lawton." And Floyd, Deadshot's like, "I hit him with what they understood, lady. If they believed in brotherhood and equality and all that other hooey, this whole situation never come up." And she's like, "So you manipulated them? preyed on their fears, just like Heller did. And Deadshot's like, that's what works. Got a problem with it? Go talk to the Colonel. He devised it. So she asked him, was this his idea of patriotism? And Flag's like, patriotism? No. Democracy? Yeah. People banding together, if not in the common good, then enlightened self-interest. Democracy shorn of its ideas, maybe, but still democracy. And Nightshade's shorn of its soul, maybe. And Flag's, look, I really do think these people back there at heart are good people. They may come together out of self-interest, but they'll stay together for the common good and work it out. Oh, it's just very nice writing. And they finish off letting us know that, without Hell's body, the legal case against Heller is going to go away. And Bronze Tiger's like, doesn't matter. He's already convicted in the court we wanted. Court of public opinion. We've destroyed his ability to manipulate it. And this last panel here is Bronze Tiger's like, we'll fight the battles that come, one by one. It's the best any of us can do. The end. Again, another great issue. Wonderful dialogue. Again, I don't say much about the art, but the art, again, in this entire run, is just fantastic art. I don't think I talk enough about Luke McDonnell, and this is Carl Gafford doing the coloring. Again, they're doing fantastic work. Again, it's very surreal, and not really surreal, but it's very realistic artwork on here. Very dark. Not necessarily dark. There are some light colors, but everything seems a little more muted, a little more realistic, if you will, which again fits very well with the Suicide Squad. It's got more, to me, it's got kind of like it may just be the paper it was printed on. It's got kind of a grimy or a gritty, realistic feel to the artwork. And again, I have gone on and on about John Ostrander's writing. Again, he writes these as real people. He's just a great writer. I love reading his work, and matched with the artwork on here, it's just excellent. I definitely recommend checking out these books. But anyways, that's issue 4 of Suicide Squad. If you guys read it, if so, let me know what you think. Go ahead and pause for a minute here, and we're going to take another quick break. Be right back with you.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
Star Trek. Comic books. Mythology. Video games. Toys. Star Wars. Just about any geeky topic you can think of could be covered on the Hammer Podcasts, presented by Two True Freaks. Come join me, Gene Hendricks, for whatever my disjointed mental processes can come up with, and be careful, or you might just learn something before we're done. The Hammer Podcast is available monthly, both on its own iTunes feed and at twotruefreaks.com.
I got a bad feeling about this.
You'd be feeling a lot better, Han, if you were listening to Dead Bothan Spies, a Star Wars podcast hosted by me, Ryan Daly.
That doesn't sound too hard.
It's not hard. You just check out Dead Bothan Spies on iTunes, Facebook, or the blog page, deadbothanspies.blogspot.com.
Don't be too proud of this technological terror you've constructed.
Well, I don't know if terror is an appropriate description. It's a podcast that combines everything you love about me talking and some of what you love about Star Wars.
I want to learn the ways of the Force and become a Jedi like my father.
Fine, whatever. Do that after you listen to Dead Bothan Spies.
Yoda. You seek Yoda.
No, you seek Dead Bothan Spies, a Star Wars podcast. Check it out. It beats kissing a Wookiee, I would think.
And welcome back. Today I've brought in another special guest. Today I've got Mr. Ryan Daly, a.k.a. Count Druncula, joining me, and we're going to talk about the Suicide Squad trailer that was released at Comic-Con. Hey there, Ryan.
How are you, Aaron? How are you doing?
Oh, doing all right. Just, I guess I'm just waiting for the Suicide Squad movie to come out. So, You saw the Suicide Squad trailer, I'm assuming.
I did. If we can call it a trailer, I think that's for lack of a better word.
Yeah, that's kind of some of my thoughts. Yeah.
I mean, that wasn't the original intention. Like, from everything that I've heard, that wasn't David Ayer or Warner Brothers' intention to release that as the first trailer. That was more or less supposed to be just kind of what they call a sizzle reel to get the people at Comic-Con excited for it.
Right, a little sneak peek, and everyone there ruined it by releasing junk versions of it. So, yeah, I saw from, who was it, from WB or whatever, saying, yeah, well, you guys are ruining things, and...
Yeah, well, they did not look good, sounding very petulant and childish, saying if you're going to leak the good stuff that we give you, then we're just not going to give you any good stuff. And the internet collectively laughed at their face and said, "Do you understand how 2015 works?"
Yeah, you've got to be prepared for stuff like this to pop out.
Yeah.
I'm of split mind. I mean, part of me understands that they're trying to do something nice for the people that's paying the money and going to Comic-Con.
Mm-hmm.
But then, as a fan myself, I don't have the money and time to go down to San Diego, and I want to see what's coming up through Suicide Squad, because I love the Suicide Squad. So
right.
I'm of two minds on that.
Yeah, and I think some of the studios understand that, and I would point to Disney and in particular Lucasfilm with what they did with Star Wars.
Oh, most definitely.
They were not ready to show a new Star Wars trailer yet. They knew that. They didn't just want to show footage that they couldn't control how it was released. So they gave people a behind-the-scenes look that they also released to the mass public online at the same time. And then for the people who did go there, they got an extra experience. They took 7,000 people outside of the auditorium, gave them a concert where, like, the San Diego Symphony Choir or something played the sound, like the John Williams score to Star Wars for an evening. They all got they all got toy lightsabers. So.
Yeah, I heard that. I've heard that on a couple of different of Kevin Smith's podcasts.
Yeah,
because I guess he followed Star Wars in Hall H, and it didn't go quite so good for him. But, well, what are your thoughts? Let's start with, since you're the guest, what are your thoughts on the trailer?
A lot of it intrigued me. And I would say, since I had very negative views about the trailer for Batman v Superman: Dawn of the Planet of the Justices, since that trailer did not fill me with any kind of positive feelings, Suicide Squad at least made me a little bit more intrigued, borderline excited for the movie. And I've had some misgivings about it, from casting decisions and just the character selections that they were going into. I knew that the psychotic elephant in the room was going to be Harley and the Joker. Yes. Two characters who, well, the Joker, who is not historically associated with Suicide Squad very much, and Harley, who is only a recent addition in the comics. And I guess I'm more old school traditionalist. I really wanted them to focus more on the team created by Ostrander in the 80s.
Preach on, my brother.
Yeah, and it looks like we're getting a lot of those characters, but they're going to be second fiddle because Warner Brothers knows who butters their bread, and this is going to be a lot of Harley. And even if the Joker doesn't have a lot of screen time, I know his presence is going to be all over this movie.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's one of my biggest complaints I've been complaining about. And for one, I'm not too happy with the way this Joker looks. The grill, the tattoos, all that kind of... not the Joker, in my opinion.
I know, and I'm trying to give them the benefit of the doubt because I'm of the mind that I don't know if there is a wrong way to do the Joker. He's such a mutable character. You can do almost any interpretation of him. Like this version of the Joker doesn't seem wrong necessarily, just not my preference. It feels, with the tattoos and the grill, the metal teeth and everything, it feels very self-aware. It feels almost like a lazy man's cosplay version of the Joker.
That's the comment I've made. That sounds like, to me, it looks like a very cheap wannabe cosplayer.
But that's also that's very contemporary. That's a sort of cutting edge take on the Joker. I think if Grant Morrison was still writing Batman comics, that is the kind of Joker he would be doing now. So
possibly.
So I don't know. I don't have a problem with Jared Leto playing the character. I think he'll be fine. I think it'll depend a lot more on the version of the Joker that they want for this new, kind of shared cinematic universe. All right. So if we're getting into details, the real selling point for this that they needed to do was they needed to sell me on Harley, and this trailer did not do that for me.
I'm right there with you. Yeah, I agree completely.
It's the things. I don't know what it is. Like her look. Okay, it's the same thing. It's the same type of look where I get what they're going for. I don't think it's very appealing in terms. That's not the kind of Harley that I want. I also just thought. Again, I'm conflicted because I'm trying to give them the benefit of the doubt is that this isn't a full trailer. This was just a weird assemblage of shots and scenes out of context. But I thought she looked kind of bored in some of the scenes, which Harley should never look bored, anything but. I thought her voice was kind of flat in what few lines of dialogue there were, because there weren't a whole lot in the... But... So I don't know. I have a feeling she's going to be the crutch. She's going to be the anchor for this whole movie, and no, she didn't do it for me in this trailer. But what did you think?
I agree 100% with what you've said. I mean, one of my biggest complaints is, as you've said, I feel they're going to rely way too much on the Joker, Harley, and even Batman. I don't think he's going to be here that much, but I think they're going to rely too much on the three of them to sell this. And I've had this conversation, whatever you want to call it, a couple different people. They're like, well, no, you have this kind of movie, you have to have a character like the Joker, a well-known character in there. And on that, I say BS.
Yeah.
If you have a good script, good writing, good actors, I mean, you can take Guardians of the Galaxy, Ant-Man, or Big Hero 6. And none of them, well, I haven't seen Ant-Man yet, but...
It's fun.
I'm sure it doesn't have any big Avengers showing up in it for the most part, or maybe a big minor cameo. I don't know yet, but I know Big Hero 6 and
Guardians of the Galaxy.
I'm
a huge Marvel fan, and I don't think I'd ever read a single comic with Rocket Raccoon or Groot before I saw that movie.
Yes, I was a big fan of the Guardians of the Galaxy back in the late 80s with the 30th Century group.
Which was a completely different group.
Yeah, which is completely different. You know, I didn't really get into this cosmic aspect of them, the modern version of them, until I heard the movies coming out. I'm like, I know of them. I've seen the comic. Let me check it out. So yeah, but if you can take the Guardians of the Galaxy and make a $1 billion, I don't know how much it made. I know it made a whole lot of money and was very popular. Everyone, like you said, Groot and Rocket Red now are very popular. And before that, no one even heard of them. You could take the Suicide Squad, and done properly, you don't have to have the Joker and Harley and Batman to sell the movie.
And I think that's probably what Warner Brothers' plan was, because it feels like they announced this movie the week after Guardians of the Galaxy came out. It was like WB said, that movie's a hit. What is our closest thing to that? What is our group of misfit criminal heroes that we can push? How can we do Guardians? And it was like, well, Suicide Squad. It's basically the closest thing we've got to that. And sorry, my dogs are going crazy.
No problem.
Sorry. And then they said, then they got cold feet. They're like, well, we don't trust these characters to sell it on themselves, so we need to put our big tentpole characters. And I mean, that could be a very pessimistic viewpoint. That could be just my natural skepticism. And I love Batman. I love the Joker, but I don't want them in everything. So I kind of wanted this to be able them to sell this concept on its own merits.
Exactly. So, that's what I've been preaching since I've seen all this stuff with the Joker and Harley coming. You don't need them in there.
Right.
I mean, yes, Harley's a big favorite right now with the fans, but again, I was like you. I was leaning more towards an Ostrander John Ostrander Suicide Squad. That's what I was hoping for.
All it is, I think, it feels like a lack of trust on the studio's part.
Well, and part of the problem is, I mean, Warner Brothers has been with DC for years, and Warner Brothers has been doing movies for hundreds upon hundreds of years, or so it seems. But they can't seem to do a decent movie other than Batman and Superman to save their life.
Mm-hmm.
Which is kind of sad. I mean, I enjoyed Green Lantern, but it wasn't as good as it could have been.
Mm-hmm.
But besides that, I mean, it's hard for them to put out a decent superhero movie. And so I think maybe that may be part of their thinking is that they need to have one of the big two in there.
Right.
But,
or when one of their movies fails, they either blame the wrong people or learn the wrong lesson.
Yeah.
And yeah.
But enough about what I don't like about us. I mean, talking these things I enjoyed. I'm not sure if you enjoyed much out of the trailer. What do you think about the Waller? What do you think about Amanda Waller?
I was very happy with that. For what little we saw of her in the beginning, I was happy. I think Viola Davis, at least she got the attitude, and pretty much just I saw it in her eyes. This is a woman who knows exactly what she wants, and she's used to getting her way because she's really good at her job. And that's the crucial thing that you need for Amanda Waller.
Yes.
I think second to that is a particular body type.
Yes.
And I'm glad they did not go with the skinniest actress available.
Amen. Yeah, I'm still hoping, CCH Pounder, but that's, my own pet peeve there. I wish, I think she's perfect for the role, but
for me, it's Marsha Warfield back when she was in Night Court in like the late 80s. But
me and Shag had talked earlier, and he had mentioned Nell Carter.
Mm.
And I didn't really think about that, but yeah, that's back in Good Times and all that. In that time frame, she would have been perfect. I'm like, actually, now that you mention it, yeah, that's a great choice also.
We're going way back, though.
But,
so that, of course, that is the issue. We need to get an actress who isn't 80.
Yes. But and I like the line. She made one line in there. She's like, getting people to act against their own self-interest is what I do.
Mm-hmm.
I really like that line. I mean, whoever wrote that line did a great job with it, and the way she delivered that line, I got chills. I'm like, well, that's Amanda Waller.
Yeah.
So I'm much more happy than I thought I was going to be with what I've seen of Amanda so far.
Right. Yeah, and that's if they can do right by Amanda Waller, I think that is a very important step in sealing the deal for this movie. So that was good. What about some of the other cast members?
El Diablo looks interesting. I'm not quite sure. Haven't seen quite enough of him yet to make up my mind. Some of the promo shots I saw, I wasn't too impressed with. He looked a little too emancipated, maybe, or I'm not sure the word I'm looking for. He was
emaciated.
Yeah. Yes, that's. But in here, he looked a little better here in action, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I doubt he'll survive the movie, so I don't have much attachment for the character.
Well, I say I don't have any. Again, I don't have any love for the character. I did like that they showed the orb.
Yes.
Caught that.
Yes, the most obscure Marvel character becomes the most intriguing part of a DC trailer. Yeah, I think just trying to put some context together, I think that's probably a Joker henchman, because it looked like actually a lot of the action scenes in the trailer, I think, are flashbacks to Joker, like, taking over or riding in Arkham or something.
Possibly.
Because I think there is a shot where it looks like Harley, when she's a doctor, like she's wearing a lab coat,
right,
and like one of Joker's goons or somebody wearing a weird mask captures her. So. Anyway, I mean that's speculation. That's what I would assume.
That's all we have really. As you said, this isn't really even a full trailer for the most part, so that's all we really have to go on is speculation. What do you think about, as I refer to him, Pimp Daddy Deadshot? That one scene with him walking down the street, it looks like a pimp to me. I don't.
Yeah, he looked pretty smooth in that scene. First of all, in terms of the look, I like this Deadshot's look. I actually really like the mask. I was really surprised. I didn't think they would do that, and I've talked to some people who think the mask looks stupid and they hate it.
Well, really?
I think the mask looks pretty cool.
I like the mask. I'm just afraid they're not going to have him in there often enough.
Well, yeah, they won't.
Because it's Will Smith.
They're going to show his face, and that's the important thing. And we've talked a little bit about this off of this conversation. When they first announced that Will Smith was in talks for this movie. At the same time, they were saying that they were going to do a new Green Lantern movie. I was like, well, don't put Will Smith in Suicide Squad. Put him in the new Green Lantern movie, because you need a fresh take on that franchise to wash the taste of the first movie off of most people's mouths. Because I think you liked that movie more than a lot of people did.
Yeah, yeah. I had one of the gals I work with. She knows I'm a big Green Lantern fan. She's like, you don't want to see the movie. It's horrible. You're going to hate it.
Yeah. And
actually, so I don't know if I went in with lowered expectations, so I liked it a little bit more, but I didn't think it was horrible.
Yeah.
Again, if I have to give it a grading, I'd probably give it like a C. So it wasn't horrible, but it could have been a whole lot better.
Right. But I thought if they had cast Will Smith as Jon Stewart, probably the most high-profile, best, black character that DC has, or black hero at least.
Right.
I was like, that would have been a money casting choice. That would have been awesome. He could have saved that franchise. Got a lot of people to give Green Lantern another shot. But they said no, that he was going to do Suicide Squad, and I was like, okay. And I think the first thing they said was he was in talks to play Captain Boomerang.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, wow, that was going around for like a few days, and I was like, what, are you crazy?
Yeah.
And then I was like, no, I mean, if he's going to be in Suicide Squad, he could be Bronze Tiger, or he could be Rick Flag. I was like, Will Smith has the cool bearing. He could be the military-minded Rick Flag. And then they said he was Deadshot. I was like, that's the opposite of everything Will Smith has ever done.
Yeah, I thought Bronze Tiger, and again, I've made this point. I've made this point before, and I'm sure we've talked about it, but I'm very much a purist. I don't like when they change races just to change it. So I would have preferred, I see Bronze Tiger, even Black Manta, or some of my mind's escaping. But I think you could have done good as Bronze Tiger.
I'm fine with them changing races when it is necessary. And the examples I would point to was in the Avengers, okay, a Black Nick Fury is fine. You needed some more racial diversity in that team.
Right.
And that was a compromise.
Well, part of the reason I accepted that is because they're pulling from the Ultimate Universe in there when they did the Ultimate Universe.
Right.
He's actually based on Samuel Jackson. So
yeah. And the other example was Jamie Foxx playing Electro in Amazing Spider-Man 2. I was like, okay, fine. Spider-Man doesn't have any really notable black villains or supporting characters outside the Prowler, and I think we're going to have 30 Spider-Man movies before we ever get to the Prowler.
Well, there's Rocket Racer.
Okay, I just made my point.
Yeah, I'm stretching.
So I was fine with that, and also because how many Electro fans are there, diehard Electro fans are there that were going to complain about that? But the getting back to Suicide Squad has a lot of black characters that you could reach for. Right. Bronze Tiger, Vixen, going more recent incarnations like characters like Black Manta, Black Spider. There are lots of other alternatives you could have. So I didn't see the need. This felt like they were just saying, okay, Will Smith is our biggest actor, our biggest celebrity in the movie, and Deadshot is the juiciest part.
Right.
So we have to put them together. I'm like, okay, that seems like you're trying to make everybody happy, and usually when studios do that, they make nobody happy.
Yeah, usually.
So, but he might be wrong. He might be fine. They might have changed the role a little bit to play it more to Will Smith's strengths. I thought his line in the trailer about saving the world was horrible, but I'm hoping that in context it'll be said with a little bit more irony.
Right. Again, taken out of context, so it could come out better. I did kind of like the way he said, what are we, some kind of Suicide Squad?
Mm-hmm.
That actually got a little bit of a giggle out of me.
Yeah. What really bothered me was, after looking at the trailer, the guy who is playing Rick Flag, Joel Kinnaman,
right,
would be an awesome Deadshot.
Yes.
He's got the look, everything from the facial hair. But I don't know how familiar you are with him. He was in the more recent RoboCop remake, which wasn't good.
Right.
But he was also in a TV show called The Killing. If you ever get a chance, the first 2 seasons of that show are really good. Second 2 seasons are awful. Don't watch the second 2 seasons.
Okay, I'll have to.
But he plays a detective who's like a recovering addict. Sorry. He plays a detective who's a recovering addict. He's got some issues, but he can dig into the tortured past of Floyd Lawton. He can play up the sarcasm. It's gonna be a struggle for me watching the movie, seeing him play Rick Flag and not wanting him to play Deadshot. But yeah. Other than that, characters. Killer Croc looked interesting. He looked cool. I'm glad he's not a 7-foot tall CGI'd monster.
Right. I kind of wish they would have went for more of a traditional, like maybe King Shark or something.
Mm-hmm.
But I kind of see where they're going, and I like Croc, and I like I like what they're doing with him.
Yeah.
Again, looks like it's more physical makeup instead of CGI, and so I'm liking what I've seen so far. Back to Deadshot for a second. I did like the scene with him and his daughter.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was kind of out of the comic, and I enjoyed that. So, and then Enchantress. Do you have any thoughts on her? I'm assuming that's who that was.
Yeah. The character, from what I've read in the comics, and admittedly, I've only read the first 15, 16 issues of the comics. The character was cool, but she never really pinged on my radar. I was always more attracted to characters like Bronze Tiger, Captain Boomerang, and Deadshot. So Enchantress just kind of flew under my radar. But just from the faint little glimpses we've seen of her in this trailer and in like the promotional images, I'm really interested in what they do with her. Like, I think her look is really cool, and she's kind of sneaking up on me as being possibly like the MVP of just like the trailer. And we didn't see her do anything special, but just the look. And we see like 2 sides of her. We see her looking horrible, dark emo goth, and seeing her what is her alternate name? The
June Moon.
June Moon. Yeah, we see a little bit of that side of her.
Yeah.
And yeah, she actually, between her and Waller, like those were the 2 characters where I was like, those are the 2 that I want to watch more of.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, yeah, again, I know her traditional look, the green magic hat and the little green nightie she's wearing or whatever, isn't really going to play out too well in live action, so I understand the change. And like you, we didn't see a lot of her, but what I've seen so far, I'm intrigued. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing more of her. A couple of the points I did like, I enjoyed watching the team walking down the streets.
Mm-hmm.
I forget if they showed it twice or if I just really liked it, because I've got that in my notes twice. So I really like them walking. Apparently.
There's like a shot of them walking down a long hallway, and then a shot of them walking down the street. So I think the movie will have several like just group, like slow motion walking shots.
And I did like the scene.
It's like the right stuff.
And I did like the scene where Harley was cocking the baseball bat like a gun.
Mm-hmm.
Something about that just struck me as kind of very Harley.
Mm-hmm. Here's no, go ahead. What were you gonna say?
I was gonna move on to another character we hadn't talked about yet really much. Captain Boomerang.
I don't like his look. The heavy, like almost beard, mutton chop sideburns, and like the short hair. Like he looks greasy and nasty.
Not quite right.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I don't like the look. I need to hear him speak, and I need to see him betray the team.
Yeah.
That's
very much so.
And that's the thing. If he doesn't turn out to be a backstabber in the movie, then I'm rioting.
Well, let me know. I'll get the torches and the pitchforks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But and then let me see here. And then the only other real comment I had on it was back to the beginning of the conversation about the Joker. That last line he played. A lot of people seem to like that last line he made where I want to hurt you really bad. Again, I know it's taken out of context. To me, it just didn't. It didn't. I don't know. I just didn't like that. It just didn't come across very well to me for some reason.
No, again,
Yeah, I know it's taken out of context. And
again, it feels very much like the look of the character. It feels very self-aware. It's very just, I'm the Joker. This is what I do. This is something crazy and scary, I could say, to kind of put you on edge at the end of this trailer.
Right.
And it's, I don't know. So maybe that line won't be in the movie. Who knows?
Or maybe, like I say, once it actually, if it's in there and in context, maybe it'll actually come out a little better.
Right.
I'm hoping.
Yeah.
But overall, I kind of enjoyed it for the most part, except for, like I said, a few gripes we've had. I think one reason I really enjoyed it because it started off the Waller, and and I really liked the way they did the wall. So I mean, that kind of put me in a good mood for it.
Like, the look of it is pretty cool. It's hard to tell at this point, this early in the game, because it still feels like a rough assemblage of shots. But I think the tone, the color palette, these are all things that are pretty cool. I like the aesthetic. I like the visuals in terms of the few shots where it looks like Harley's at a nightclub or something, and Batman is hanging off the roof of Joker's Lamborghini. Those looked cool. Those were cool shots. Like, I liked the color. I liked how slick that looked. That might be really fun. Again, it looked a lot like Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice things, which is way too dark for my tastes. So that's in comparison.
Right. Well, see, and this is that's one of my big complaints about, like, Man of Steel was too dark. A lot of DC movies they're going for more of a darker angle. This is one movie that I don't mind, and I actually like the darker angle towards it, because that's the Suicide Squad for you.
Right. That's appropriate.
Yeah.
And it's you need that darkness to show how bright and sunny and noble the heroes are. And if you don't have that contrast, I think you're missing the point. Which, when you've got Superman versus Batman and they both look gray.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say, we're getting the darkness here for the villains, which is fine. But yeah, I'm so far, and I'm hoping maybe after Batman v Superman, maybe Superman is starting to lighten up a little bit. I'm hoping, knock on wood. But yeah, so far I'm not seeing that other side of the chart there, the lightness and the goodness in the heroes. So
I don't want Deadshot to be the most moral and forthright person in this universe.
That would be a bad saying.
So yeah, overall, I have some nitpicky problems with that trailer, and some not nitpicky, some actual substantive. But for being what it was, a sort of trailer, it was effective in getting me interested and intrigued in the movie, more so than I was before.
Well, that's a good thing then.
Yeah. So,
well, do you have any other thoughts on it then, or you summed it up pretty much good enough?
I think that's all I had, unless you had something else that you want to talk about.
No, I think we've pretty much covered everything. Okay. Before we sign off, you want to go ahead and tell everybody where they can locate you out there on the inner tubes?
Yeah, I've got several podcasts. The most popular and the one that keeps me the busiest is the Secret Origins podcast, which covers the Secret Origins comic book that DC published in the late 80s. It's me and a rotation of guest hosts covering each story in the Secret Origins canon. Your beloved host, Brotherhead, Aaron Moss, will be a guest on that if he isn't already by the time this goes up. Other podcasts, I've got Flowers and Fishnets, a Black Canary podcast, which is a monthly kind of look at some of the Black Canary stories and comics and other media. And the last one is the Dead Bothan Spies, a Star Wars podcast, which is also a monthly show, just covering whatever random topics I feel like talking about in the world of Star Wars.
Well, for what it's worth, I'm really enjoying the Secret Origins podcast so far.
Thank you very much.
Even with one of Shag on it.
He's the worst.
But then again, it helps that, you guys covered one of my favorite heroes, so what the
heck.
There you go. All right, well, thank you again very much for showing up today.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me.
And one final commercial break before we wrap up the show.
We'll return after these messages.
Hey listeners, it's Ryan Daly here to give you an exciting sneak peek at the Secret Origins podcast, a review show dedicated to the post-crisis Secret Origins comics. Secret Origins told or retold or occasionally reimagined the origins of many of DC's legendary superheroes, including Superman, Batman, The Flash, Green Lantern, Green Arrow, Jonah Hex, Nightwing, Plastic Man, Batgirl, Blackhawk, Black Lightning, Booster Gold, Detective Chimp, the Legion of Superheroes, and 100 others. But I won't be alone in my coverage of these epic stories. I'm bringing the best and brightest and irredeemable-est guest stars from the blogosphere and podcast community, such as Chris Franklin from the Supermates podcast.
I think this is a great idea for a podcast, and I wish I thought of it first, but it's in good hands.
Chris and I are going to be reviewing the first issue of Secret Origins, which tells the story of the Golden Age Superman. And now, Chris, I don't know if this has ever come up before on your own show, but would you say you're much of a Superman fan?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I am definitely a Superman fan. Superman, the movie, is still my favorite movie of all time. That's my Star Wars. I don't remember a time when I didn't know who Superman was.
Tim Wallace from Cord Industries, a blog devoted to Blue Beetle.
My friends, my close friends, would probably tell you that Aquaman was my favorite hero, and they wouldn't be too far off from the truth, but there was already a pretty decent blog covering Aquaman, so I went for my number 2, which was Blue Beetle. And this issue actually has a lot to do with why he's one of my favorites.
Luke Giaconetti from the Hawkman blog Being Carter Hall and the Earth Destruction Directive podcast. Thank you for having the enthusiasm to talk about Halo, because this is not a character that I know much about.
It's I'm one of the oddballs in that I'm an Outsiders fan who doesn't like the Teen Titans. So I figure I'm pretty much required to do my due diligence in defending the members of the Outsiders team, especially one of the originals.
Siskoid from Siskoid's blog of Geekery and the Hero Points podcast.
One of the subjects I keep returning to is Golden Age superheroes. I like exploring the history of comics, and especially DC Comics, which has the biggest load of Golden Age heroes. In Secret Origins is full of these because Roy Thomas wrote half the series or so, and just like he wrote a lot of Golden Age heroes and brought Golden Age heroes to our attention in the 80s, which was when I started reading comics.
And of course, Rob Kelly from the Fire and Water podcast.
The plan was, all this time, once we finished Who's Who, we were going to do the Secret Origin series. That was our next big project. And you have swooped in and stolen it, and I'm just saying, you better not screw this up. I mean, you're on episode 4, and you brought in your biggest guest star yet. But from here, if it's just downhill, I'm going to be really ticked off that you ruined our idea.
I wasn't really listening to any of that. Plus more incredible guests, including Sean Engel, Chad Bokelman, Kyle Benning, Nathaniel Wayne, Paul Scavito, Greg Arajo, Tom Panarese, Doug Zawissa, Aaron Moss, Alan Middleton, Max Romero, Gene Hendricks, Stella, Ange, Diablo Frank, and possibly even more. Join us as we uncover the secret origins of all your favorite DC heroes, except for Wonder Woman, and Aquaman, and Supergirl, and the Huntress, and Red Tornado, and Mira and Aqualad, and John Stewart, the Green Lantern, and Wildcat, and Metamorpho, and Geoforce, and Mr. Terrific, and Snapper. The Secret Origins Podcast.
And we're back. I know this could be like a triple-sized length episode. We're just over 3 hours right now, but seeing how it's the anniversary episode, I think it's well worth it. So the final segment for today is we're going to have suicide notes. First of all, I'm going to go over Facebook likes and comments. People that have liked us on Facebook and made comments. There's Julio Alonso Carlos, Greg Arroyo. Sorry if I'm messing up your name there, Greg. Dave Chaffin, Ryan Daly, Firestorm fan, Jack Flowers, Joey Gross, again, sorry if I'm messing up maybe your names, our buddy Gene Hendricks, Chris Ivy, and Jim Remold, Again, I'm not great at names, so if I mess up any of your names, I apologize in advance and afterward. Over on Google Plus, we had a like from Willie Yarborough. And also, first time in a little while, we have an email from our new friend, Willie Yarborough. And again, Willie, let me know if I'm messing up your name. I'm going to go ahead and read Willie's email. He starts off, "Hello, Head. I'm relatively new to posting comments on internet forums. However, I'm compelled to reach out to you and commend you on your wonderful blog and your highly entertaining podcast, Task Force X. I'd like to start at the beginning about how I discovered your podcast and this blog. A few months ago, I discovered the Fire and Water podcast. Quick interlude right here. That's another great podcast. Good for you, Willie. I hope you enjoy that one also. Back to Willie's letter. I must admit, I'm only tangentially a fan of Firestorm and slightly more interested in Aquaman. Another little editor's note here. Firestorm's the better hero, my friend. Anyways, back to the letter. I do like them, and I found that I wanted to learn more about the rich histories of both these characters, so I downloaded their podcast via iTunes and started listening. I strategized that I'd knock out their Who's Who series first. Well, last week, about a month later, after starting their Who's Who series, I found myself on episode 22, which was finally covering my all-time favorite, you guessed it, the Suicide Squad. It was a very in-depth analysis of both the Silver Age and modern incarnations of the Squad. Upon their completion of listening, they gave your podcast and blog post a shout-out. Again, sorry to interrupt, Willie. Another little editor's note. Thanks a lot, Shag and Rob. Anyway, back to Willie's letter. At first, I was stunned to find that someone was producing a dedicated forum for such an underappreciated cult favorite. In amazement, I literally listened to their suggestions several more times, and then I had my line got cut off there. Try that again. In amazement, I literally listened to their suggestions several more times, then I excitedly searched iTunes, and to my surprise and glee, I found your podcast. I'm late to the party, but I'm here now. You've got a fan for life. Thank you for creating this wonderful online community for fellow old school and new Suicide Squad fans. I'm overjoyed listening to your retrospective analysis and comprehensive coverage of this landmark series. It's so great to find another diehard fan of such an original concept as the Suicide Squad. The Ostrander-Kuppenberg era of DC's gritty espionage storytelling will always have a very special place in my heart. During the mid-'80s, during Crisis on Infinite Earths, I immersed myself in DC's universe. However, my only real superhero foray was Green Lantern and the Green Lantern Corps. After Crisis, I finally remembered the Legends miniseries, and I saw this as a new jumping-on point. Plus, I was working part-time, and I could afford a hobby. During the Legends event, I discovered Task Force X. I was fascinated about the whole concept of showcasing supervillains and the clandestine nature of their missions. Also, the tension and real drama of negative outcomes resulting in death for these disposable rogues. Also, the fact that cannon fodder characters were developed so that I cared what happened to them made the reading experience all the more enjoyable. Once again, from the bottom of this fanboy's heart, I thank you for creating a place where fans of Suicide Squad can celebrate this wonderful series. I've listened to 3 episodes so far, and I'm truly loving your detailed issue-by-issue breakdowns, character profiles, footnotes, and annotations. I salute your loving dedication, and thank you for your hard work in presenting this content to the fan community at large. I'm pleased to make your acquaintance, and I look forward to corresponding with you in the future. Until then, bye for now, and kind regards. A P.S. I'll have an iTunes review up for Task Force X podcast soon. It's the least I can do. I just wanted to share my thanks with you first at this blog site and join this fan community. Thanks again for all you do. Your friend, Willie, a.k.a. Black Vulcan. Well, Willie, or if you prefer Black Vulcan, I thank you very much for your letter. Honestly, I'm doing this for myself because I enjoy talking about Ostrander's Suicide Squad. It was a great series, and I felt it needed some coverage that was missing out there. But when I hear from fans of the series, such as yourself, that it's enjoying what I'm doing, it fills me with joy myself. It lets me know that I'm not talking to the wind, that I'm actually reaching people, and people are enjoying what I'm doing. So thank you very much, Willie, for the letter. Thank you for listening. Thank you for the kind words. And I definitely look forward to hearing from you in the future. Check out the Facebook pages I've talked about. If you're on Facebook, check out the Facebook page. Feel free to send me a message anytime. Welcome aboard, and I hope you enjoy your stay, friend. And again, if you have any other comments, criticisms, or anything, please feel to let me know. And jumping over to iTunes real quick, we have one new rating on there. If you can't guess who, peel back just 30 seconds and listen to the last letter I read. Yes, our buddy Black Vulcan 69 left a comment on iTunes for me. Again, he left a 5-star review. And basically, it's a lot of what he's already said, but I'm going to go ahead and read it again just because I enjoy hearing people talk about me. I highly recommend this in-depth and loving retrospective analysis of the Suicide Squad comic book series in the late 80s to early 90s. The host, Aaron Moss, is a true aficionado of this landmark and groundbreaking series. He also can't read, just so you guys, understand. That was for me. Anyways, back to Willie's review. This podcast is a must for any fan of the classic sequential art and storytelling. This podcast provides an in-depth analysis of both the Silver Age and modern incarnations of the Suicide Squad. I was pleasantly stunned to find that someone was producing a dedicated form for such an underappreciated cult favorite. Thank you, Aaron, for creating this wonderful online community for both old and new Suicide Squad fans. I'm overjoyed listening to your retrospective analysis and comprehensive coverage of this landmark series. It's so great to find another diehard fan of such an original concept as the Suicide Squad. The Ostrander-Kupperberg era of DC's gritty espionage storytelling will always have a very special place in my heart. Once again, from the bottom of this fanboy's heart, I thank Aaron for creating a place where fans of the Suicide Squad can celebrate this wonderful series. I'm truly loving your dedicated issue-by-issue breakdowns, character profiles, footnotes, and annotations. I salute your loving dedication, and thank you for your hard work in presenting this content to the fan community at large. Thanks again, Aaron, for all you do, and to the fans out there, do yourself a favor and listen to this podcast. Well, I'm gushing now. Thank you again very much, Willie. I forgot the title of his review was called A Brilliantly Fun Retrospective Analysis. So far I've got 3 customer reviews on iTunes. The one I just read from Black Vulcan 69, our buddy Gene Hendricks, and Count Druncula, who you've heard this very episode. I just want to thank you 3 for leaving reviews. And to anyone else out there that's listening, join them. Leave me a review. Let me know what you think. Send me an email. You can send me an email, as always, to taskforcex@headspeaks.com, and you too can get read on the air. I enjoy listening and hearing your guys' feedback, whether it's complimentary like Willie's, or if you have some criticism for me. Let me know what you think I can do better. Let me know what you don't like, and we can go from there. Also, as I always tell you guys, if you want to hear your own voice on the air, you can send me an MP3 to taskforcex@headspeaks.com, and I can play your MP3 on the air also with your thoughts. And before we finish up, a little self-pimping. Just to let you guys know, I am on the current episode of Comic Book Fight Club, which just dropped a day or so ago. Check it out. I joined their group of merry little men, and we talk about the Suicide Squad versus the A-Team. Also, there's G.I. Joe versus S.H.I.E.L.D., and the Vader's 501 First versus the Animorphs. Animorphs? That's not right. The guys from Aliens, the creatures. Take a listen and see who would win those battles. Also, in the next month or 2, I will be showing up on Secret Origins Podcast, Episode 14, where me and the host, Ryan Daly, talk about the secret origins of the Suicide Squad. So take a listen to Secret Origins, and let me know what you guys think. But anyways, we're going up on close to an hour and a half, or on 3.5 hours. So I think I've talked and had enough people talking today on here. So we're going to go ahead and take off for the day. We'll see you guys next month when we review Suicide Squad number 5. Be sure to join us here next month. Until then, over and out, squad mates. Thank you for listening to another great episode of Task Force X. I can also be found rambling on my main headcast of Head Speaks, where I rant and rave about movies, comics, geek stuff, and whatever is bugging me.
Mate, You just out-crazied the Joker.
Well, I tried, Boomer, but... Anyways, my home on the internet is at headspeaks.com. HEADSPEAKS.com. Links to my blog, which contain follow-up information to this and every headcast, can be found there. Both Task Force X and Headspeaks are on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and at headspeaks.com under Headcasts. Please feel free to email me any questions, comments, or concerns to taskforcex@headspeaks.com. And if you want to record a message, you can send it to me at taskforcex@headspeaks.com, and I'll play it on the air. I'm also on Facebook at Task Force X, and also on Google+, you can look for Task Force X under People and Pages. All titles and characters discussed are owned and copyrighted by DC Comics. I claim no ownership to the Suicide Squad, Checkmate, or Task Force X. I'm just a big fan wanting to spread the Task Force X love with everyone else. DC Comics can be found on the web at dccomics.com. Be sure to visit your local comic shop and look for Suicide Squad and Checkmate Comics. And while you're there, see what else they have that may interest you.
Mother...
Well, make sure you join us here next time for another fun-filled headcast from your friendly neighborhood Brotherhead. In the meantime, I'll see you in the funny pages.
Yippee!
Again, Firestorm and the Atom are my two favorite heroes. So
fantastic, man. Those are good choices. You know what I always wanted? And if you need to go, say, dude, I gotta go.
Oh, no, I'm good.
Okay. There was that era when Ronnie was on his own.
Right.
You know, around 2000, something like that. And Ray Palmer was actually tutoring.
Yes.
I wanted them to merge. I wanted Ray Palmer to become the new Professor Scott.
Yes, me too.
I thought it would be perfect. And, like, you know, both use atomic symbols, you know, kind of thing. And maybe that would give Firestorm the power to shrink. I don't know.
I thought kind of that's where they were headed for a little bit there.
I thought they were. Because when you read Joe Kelly, I think it was Joe Kelly? Firestorm rejoined the Justice League for a little while there. During the Obsidian Age or whatever the hell the thing was. And Ronnie was a little out of sorts. And there were a couple of moments where Ronnie was talking to himself and where Ronnie used the pronoun we. And a couple of characters were like, why did you say we? And it could be just written off as saying, you know, oh, well, Ronnie's just used to having the professor, so he's still in that mode. Or what I thought they were going to reveal was that he was already merged with Red.
Okay.
And they were waiting to reveal it. But that never came about. I've never read that anywhere. It was just my stupid speculation, and I am always wrong when I speculate something. Always to a fault. I don't know if you know, there was actually, spinning out of that, there was a Firestorm series planned right before the Jason Rush series.
No.
There was a Ronnie Raymond Firestorm series supposed to come out in 2003. And I don't mean to plug my site here now that we're not on the air, but if you do want to learn about it, I do have a post out there. It's called like the Firestorm series that never was.
Oh,
or something
okay.
like that.
I've looked at a lot of stuff on your page.
Well, I only mention it not because I'm trying to plug my page, but it's like every once in a while you do something that you're actually proud of, you know, and I'm proud of that because it was incredibly comprehensive, and I actually talked to the writer and artist who was supposed to do it. Mike Carey, who went on to superstar fame with a series called Unwritten and X-Men and things like that.
Right.
He was actually going to write this Firestorm book. And there's some art from it out there. It was going to be a really weird. It would have failed miserably because it was very weird. Firestorm was going to consist of 7 people.
Oh wow, yeah.
It was really trippy, and like each form would look different. Sometimes Firestorm would look like a child, a young girl. Sometimes it would look like a lion. Sometimes it would look like a robot. It was bound for cancellation before it even came out. But it's an interesting idea, and Mike Carey, who writes Unwritten, is a really amazing writer. So, but anyway, I'm rambling. Sorry.